Good evening, everyone. I'm Stu Hardy, Chair of the Tiverton Planning Board, and welcome to our August 6th regular monthly meeting. And as usual, I'll start off with a roll call to establish a quorum. Christopher Shriver. Here. William Gerlach.
Present.
Janice Gomes.
Present.
Richard Taylor.
Here.
Rosemary Eva.
Present.
Patricia Hilton.
Present.
V.A. Lopes.
Present.
And Stephen Clark.
Present.
So it looks like we have a full house. Everybody's present. Sitting to my left is Todd Romano, our legal counsel, and sitting to his left is Ashley Sweet, our interim town planner. And I see John Hoyle, our building official, in the audience. So I'd like to make an announcement. The first item on the agenda, the applicant, 331 Main Road, that's the adoptive reuse of a historic chapel in North Tiverton. The applicant has asked for a continuation of the public hearing that was scheduled for tonight. So, but before we move on to agenda item number 2, I'd like to open the public hearing for 331 Main Road. And then I would like to make a motion to both, two-part motion, that will both continue the public hearing to our next regular monthly meeting, which is September 10, and will also accept the request of the applicant to extend the time clock to September 30th, 2024. So would anybody care to second my motion?
So moved.
So we have a second from Rosemary. Is there any discussion on this? Hearing none, all those in favor? It's unanimous. So now I will close the public hearing and move on to agenda item. Continue the public hearing and move on to agenda item number 2, which is the Newport Restaurant Group. And this is a concept plan. And so Neil stepping up. And so if you would introduce yourself and your colleague. And we all have materials from the Newport Restaurant Group. They are looking to expand the Boathouse Restaurant from 90-odd seats to 331 seats. But they've given us 2 different options to take a look at. And so having said that, please give us a little background on this, and we'll give you our thoughts on it.
Just before you begin, Neil, we just need to put one thing on the record. Mr. Gerlach, please.
Sure. For the record, I'd just like to state that my oldest son, Will Gerlach, is a part-time employee of Newport Restaurant Group and the Boathouse Restaurant in particular. He's a line cook there.
And Bill had asked me for my legal opinion as to whether that would cause a conflict of interest. It is not. In my opinion, there is no conflict of interest because his son is, not to diminish it, but only a line cook. So he does not receive any greater benefit or a benefit to any greater extent than any other person similarly situated who works for the Boathouse. And I rely on Ethics Commission advisory opinions number 95-79 and 2008-60.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Good.
Hi, Neil Hingarani, principal of Narragansett Engineering. I think many of us, if not all of us, have met before. This is Ken Kusan of the restaurant group. Principal, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Sure. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, the rest of the board. Thank you for hearing our application tonight. My name's Ken Kusan. I'm the Director of Business Development for the Newport Restaurant Group. And we made actually a similar application, presented this, I believe, back in 2022. Really what we're trying to accomplish is expand our kitchen because we've reached capacity at at the restaurant at this point. The expansion would go to the east, and Neil will be able to explain kind of the details of the expansion, but really, primarily what we're looking to do is create some additional outdoor seating to accommodate another bar and some dining seats and a raw bar to the north of the restaurant, which is where we have some existing outdoor dining now. The interior space will remain the same. We won't be increasing any seats on the interior of the restaurant. And to the south, the patio, the existing patio will be essentially the same exact footprint with the same seating that exists now. So really our application addresses the expansion of the kitchen, which as it goes to the east, and then the seasonal seats to the north, which right now our seating plan is, it looks like about an increase of 70 seats over what is existing now.
What is existing now?
I believe we have the 227. I don't believe it would be going to 331. So I would need to really confirm that once we have a final floor plan.
So the entire expansion would be, in terms of customers, the entire expansion would be seasonal
Yes.
and roughly outdoor.
71, right, so that, it's all outdoor. So there won't be any internal expansion whatsoever. And I can tell you that the floor plan that we have designed right now is 71 seats.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And right, that's just an important record correction. Just this was, I think, inadvertently advertised as a 331-seat expansion. That's the projected, and not even the projected total number. But just for order of magnitude, 70, 71 additional seats is what we're looking at. To back up a little bit, we have prepared a site plan. It was not submitted, in the interest of time to try to get on this meeting agenda. Broad brush, we do have, I wouldn't say an accelerated schedule, but a reasonable schedule, but it is somewhat compressed, and for obvious reasons. The restaurant does not want to close down their facilities in the summer, so we're trying to structure this timeline so that the work can be completed, late fall, early winter, and be ready, for the prior season. So we're interested in getting up here quickly. I assume everyone or most everyone is familiar with the restaurant. I mean, it's fairly iconic in town. It's 227 Schooner. It is in the Waterfront zoning district, although I understand that may be a topic of discussion later this evening. There was a prior concept meeting in 2022 where I think a similar scope, similar scale was discussed with this board, and we're here with some updates and some things that are a little bit more finely tuned. The restaurant group has reached out to the abutters for comment, understanding that that's sort of a critical part of this. And I think the potential concerns are probably obvious, mostly centering on views and noise. And I think Greg Yolanis, the architect, can speak to those later. But I think we're addressing both of those by, keeping the profile of the restaurant as squat as possible. And then putting the mechanicals in an enclosure so that they'll reduce the sound levels versus what they are right now. Obviously, we're within coastal resources. That's going to be a big part of this. The permits from the original development are obviously quite expansive and quite lengthy, but we've done our homework up to date and feel like we have a good handle on what was originally designed and promised and what we may need to modify to get there. Just for sort of comparison's sake, you can see here, maybe on the screen behind you, but just to put things into perspective, this is the sort of original campus that was approved, and there was an inn and some mixed-use commercial buildings. You can see where Schooner Drive is right now, and then we've got this sort of tiny little blop of a restaurant on this plan that is now the principal use of the facility. So it's just interesting to put it into scale versus, what was originally envisioned there and may come to pass in some form or another down the road. I think we're interested in hearing what's going to be discussed later on this evening. My understanding is that this may fall into a Waterfront 2 zone where a restaurant is a permitted use, but a live entertainment may require a special use permit. And I think we'll hopefully hear more on that later because that's impactful to this application. I did speak with Ed earlier. He wasn't able to find, we haven't been able to find yet the original decision for this application. We presume it was a conforming use at the time. Restaurant doesn't appear to be a conforming use now, but that very well may change, in the matter of, I'm not sure, months.
Neil?
Yes.
I hate to interrupt, but
Please.
this is part of the Armuck overlay district on it. And there was a residential component and there's a commercial component. And you did not mention that in your narrative. So that's where these, renderings, I guess, that you found. But we were very concerned about it. So.
Sorry, could you clarify those comments again? I'm not sure I fully
I'm
understood.
sorry, I'm having difficulty with my hearing. I had a procedure done. So you're going to have to talk a little louder for me.
Could you clarify your comment? I'm not sure I fully
It-
understood.
When this was developed, they had an overlay district, age-restricted mixed use called the Armuck.
And it's still in effect.
It's in effect, it's in the town's code. It is, I believe, section 7 or 10. You can look it up in the index anyhow, but it does have requirements in there. A lot of it pertains to the residential because the village is above it, and they're your abutters. And also, the abutters list was not included in the narrative that you presented.
Okay, that's interesting, and I think hopefully something we can dig into a little bit. These are,
Certainly hope so.
yeah, these are now separate parcels. I understand they were developed in aggregate, but now the restaurant is a completely separate parcel to the.
It's part of the zoning code, and it's 2 modules, the residential and the commercial.
Okay. Maybe we can come back to that, if you don't mind. There's probably a lot there to talk about. So the existing conditions, I think this parcel is somewhere on the order of 26 acres, extends to the north of where I'm showing here, and does include most of Schooner Drive here. You can see it highlighted in yellow behind you. Split by the railroad principally. And again, now at this time, these are 2 separate parcels as far as I'm aware. The work would occur.
Excuse me,
Just come
Neil,
back
do you have
here.
deeds showing this being a separate parcel?
I have, let me see if I can pull it
I'm
up
just trying to
right
understand
here.
where you came up with that.
Yeah, so
And I'm not
here's,
questioning it.
no, and I appreciate the question. This is what we're here early to try to figure out because these are key. So I have here what I believe is the sort of latest and greatest recorded survey. And this is what's showing, let's see if I can highlight these pieces here. So coming along the water.
Yep.
Yep, you can see the railroad, and then there's sort of an extension that, runs for up to Schooner. So exactly how it was separated, getting into the land evidence, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. It's certainly something, there's a whole team, including a title attorney as part of this group. So if there are questions to that, I'm sure we can dig into that.
Who's that?
Jeffrey Saint,
Severe.
thank you.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
He did the original title work.
That's right.
All right, so continuing on, right, the existing structure, which I'll zoom into here. Again, I'm sure we're familiar with it. We have sort of the main restaurant here. There's a maybe 3-4 season patio with an enclosure to the south, some more seating on the patio area to the north. I'm sure everyone's familiar with, driving down Schooner, taking a right into the parking area. Parking area is mostly crushed stone, gravel, which was a permeable surface at the time. we're seeking to improve a lot of these things. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but let's go to the proposed conditions plan. So I'll talk about site improvements, and then maybe we can get Greg up here afterward to talk about the architecture. But what you're looking at here is a proposed conditions plan. So there is a north expansion and then a south expansion here. The kitchen, as was previously discussed, would be expanding a bit, sort of plan east here.
That south is really not an expansion. We would be doing some improvements, but in terms of the footprint, it's not an expansion.
That's fair. Thank you. Yes. It's already existing right now. So the footprint changes slightly, but most of this is already there. I don't have an underlay, but the south patio probably stretches to about here already. So most of the expansion is taking place to the north, and again, we have a small expansion facilitating that kitchen here to the east. Be some improvements to the entry. These would all be new pavers here, just to really help wayfinding. Right now, the way you get into the restaurant, it's not necessarily confusing once you've been there once, but we're hoping to improve that so it's not confusing at all on the first trip, and really clarify how people enter the restaurant, find their seat, and are directed to where they can go. A little bit of outdoor seating or just outdoor green space down here to the south. That's going to remain. The green you see are some schematic stormwater improvements, so perhaps obviously any new or modified impervious would be properly treated per DEM requirements. Crosswalks, ideally some improvement of the drop-off area. We're thinking of moving the ADA accessible spaces, which are up here to the north, closer to the building to the south. And really the whole point here is to just improve the function of this parking lot. Right now it's unstriped, it's unmarked. They're certainly not getting the best bang for their buck. So we would be putting in wheel stops there and trying to identify the spaces a little bit more precisely so we can maximize the parking area that we have now. And then based on our calculations of the expansion, I think even as we sit right now, we would meet the requirement for zoning. But just to be able to handle a busy summer day, mixed with an event, some overflow parking, we're considering approximately 35 grass paved spaces up here. So that would really conform with that original sort of CRMC master plan that I showed you earlier. The grass pave really just looks like grass with some embedded markers for line striping. So if it's not in use or it's in the winter, that's going to stay unplowed. And again, it's good for stormwater. It's really as green as we can get. The stats for lot coverage, again, I think this conforms with zoning, at least dimensionally. Right now, we cover 1% of the lot, and the proposed coverage would go to 1.3%, so it's pretty marginal on the whole site. Landscape and lighting, the designs haven't progressed too far. There is a schematic set that Traverse, the landscape architect, is working on, but those improvements would be found throughout the site. Lighting is actually pretty good right now, but there would be some modifications to the lighting, and that would, of course, be warm and dark sky compliant. There are 35 spaces that we found that were delineated for public access as part of the CRMC records. Those would stay. There's really no change there. I think public access to this facility is pretty excellent. The parking spaces are there. The signage is there. There's access to the walk as well as the pier. And nothing we're doing as part of this plan would change that. We haven't spoken to Coastal directly yet, but again, we've worked up our research and feel like we have a pretty good game plan for how to square that circle. Greg, do you mind coming up, speaking up maybe about the architectural bit before we get back into the zoning?
No, I can bring up a chair. Go for it. Good evening. Greg Ulanis, I'm principal with Spring Street Studio in Newport, Rhode Island. I'm the architect for the project. I think, at the risk of repeating some of what's already been said here, I'll try and keep it brief for you. I think there were three primary elements for us to consider when looking at the design for this project, and Ken has already addressed one of them. There's an increase in customer demand here, and in order to accommodate that, we needed to make improvements to the facility, which supports those customer service areas, in addition to providing some additional customer service space. Secondly, from an architectural perspective, we wanted to pay special attention to the aesthetic and the nature of this existing building. This is a traditional New England design. There are elements of shingle styling in this building. It has a bit of coastal flair. And I don't think anybody would argue that in the years that this restaurant has been in business, it's a design that the community has come to appreciate and love. And that's something that we wanted to be respectful to when considering an addition or expansion to the building. And thirdly, we are very cognizant of the fact that we are on the western side of a development which expands uphill to our east, and knowing that we were considering additional roof lines, we wanted to be respectful of those view corridors toward the west. We all know that there are beautiful sunsets every night in this direction. I think it's easiest to describe this project in three parts. And I think if we can just back up to the floor plan, Neil, I'm not sure. Okay, thanks. To be ultra simplistic about what we're doing architecturally, looking at this floor plan, to the left side of the plan is what you're probably all familiar with, is a patio area which has a dining table, service area, as well as a bar. And this area is covered by a metal structured fabric awning structure. We are essentially reimagining that space. We'll recreate it over its existing footprint. And what we'd like to do is put a permanent roof structure in place of this fabric awning structure. That's the first component of this design. Secondly, is the building, the main building itself, which I'm sure you're all familiar. The dining area is to the west, which is the top of the page here. And to the east side of the building, which is viewed as you're coming down the hill, is the support space for this restaurant. And these are support spaces that include prep areas, storage areas, and kitchen service areas. We are proposing to expand that support space to the east, and when you look at this plan, that expanded area is represented by that shaded portion of building that's lowest on the page. That's the second piece of this project. The third component of this project is to the north, which is the right side of this page. And currently to the north is essentially a grade level decking area that has outdoor dining tables. Our plan is to remove that decking and replace it with patio surfacing, permeable pavers, and also add a permanent roof structure expanding to the north, which would accommodate additional service space. And this is the area that Ken was mentioning earlier, which has a bar and an oyster bar. There's a small piece of that addition, which is kind of the bottom right of this image that we're looking at here, that would become a new reception area, which would more closely receive customers as they're coming directly from that parking lot. So that describes the three kind of main architectural components that we're proposing. And beyond that, I think if I just, oh, yeah, oh, there you go, touch screen, apologize. These are renderings which we've created of the building, and this is a holistic view of the proposed design. Essentially, as you're coming down Schooner Drive, looking at the restaurant from the east side, the main building is toward the center. The lower section of that is the expanded restaurant or kitchen area. To the left is a new roof line, traditional in nature, which would replace the awning, which currently exists. And to the right is an open new roof structure, which accommodates the expanded service area and also that new entry area. It was a reception area I was just mentioning. And this is another perspective of that north side expansion area with the new reception space. This is a rendering that shows actually the north side or the north elevation of that north side expansion. And there's some fabric covered tables to the west side, which is the right side of the image there. And then this graphic shows you a view from the southeast, essentially, which represents the new roof structure that would replace the awning, which is on the south side of the building now. It's a very traditional design. We tried to modestly maintain that boathouse feel with language that's simplistic and easily understood. And one other, or what I just mentioned earlier, is just the notion of trying to maintain view corridors for the buildings to the east. We're sensitive to make sure that the roof lines or the height of the roofs which we're proposing are lower than the building which currently exists, and also offers some reprieve in the massing of the structure to allow for views to be kind of continuous between the various components of the building. This is a view as if you were on a boat, potentially looking from the west up toward the addition, which is on the south side of the building. And again, this is the southern view of the expanded area, or not expanded, but it's a new roof area which covers the existing awning space. And actually, that's the end of my architectural display. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Greg. The building actually looks rather attractive from the water side right now.
It does. It's a beautiful building.
But I'd like to open this up to my colleagues and see if there are any questions. And while they're thinking of questions, I'd just like to say that, as Rosemary mentioned, this would be subject to regulations in the age-restricted mixed-use community, RMUC, overlay district. So you need to check that out, Neil, also, I'd like to suggest that you review the low-impact development manual that the state has and adhere to the standards. And in particular, I'd be concerned about the expansion of parking. And I know what you're trying to do with the parking. It's a little bit chaotic right now, but to the extent possible, make any parking or any expanded parking environmentally friendly by using pervious pavers to the extent that you possibly can. I would be interested in that. The only other thing that occurs to me right now is we do have a problematical intersection in town. The only way you can get to the Boathouse Restaurant is by Schooner Drive, and the intersection of Schooner Main Road and Sousa Road is a bit problematical, and it's being discussed right now because there's another project that is being proposed for that intersection that will generate considerable traffic. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. Now, I don't think your expansion is so enormous, 70, 71 new seats, and it would be seasonal, basically, that you would have much impact on that, but I'm just calling it to your attention, because it will be something that other people will mention. So having said that, I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions or comments, or Chris?
So could you tell me a little bit about the overlay district and the impact that it would have on this proposed, I don't know enough about it, I was just trying to understand what's being referenced.
Right, well, maybe I'll ask Rosemary to answer that question, because she was around when it was created, and I wasn't.
And I carried a roll of the plans in my trunk for a long time. It took a long time to get everything through here. There was a lot of discussion, and Stu just alluded to getting on and off the property, and there was a gate, and Neil saw it, you had it on your thing. It's supposed to be gated for the, is a private, it's not a town road, but it goes through there. But apparently, the locks got, if you go back and you read some of the minutes, you'll see that the concerns that were involved there. But we had other proposals that came in, and like Stu said, there was a possibility, we were told that there's gonna be a hotel down there. There was gonna be boutique shops, but it never came to fruition. They also proposed to put in McMansions, which were really denied by already we had people living in the villages above. And, I mean, it has a long history, and I think, Chris, that you should go back and read the town code. I don't wanna misstate, what's in there. I took a cursory look at it to try to familiarize myself with it, but I am concerned about the parking and the lighting down there. I have been down there for dinner, and I noticed that someone almost took a real spill. It was a handicapped person. Very difficult to come out across the parking lot. And there are semi-design standards about having underground, if I recall, underground utilities. And, it really, I just don't want to be misstated. It's been a long time, and as I say, it went in phases, the development for the villages up above it, but it's a commercial, a residential, and a commercial module in the RMUC. I think it's section 417, I think.
I can manage, no
I should
worries.
have taken better notes, but I didn't. But that's up to you, Neil. You gotta do your homework.
And I guess I have a couple questions on that front. I mean, Ashley and I spoke, and I could be wrong here. So right now, when I look under the zoning overlay, obviously I see the waterfront district. I understand there's also an additional overlay district. The fact that we're now not residential, does that not matter? And I guess as a follow-up to that question, is there going to be, or are there currently changes proposed to this zone?
I asked Ashley, not even knowing that Boathouse was coming in, we were at a meeting, and I said, does this waterfront proposal negate what is there for an overlay? And she said, no, it's the overlay rules.
So
Todd will-
we're gonna need to look into this a bit, because I think it's not clear. The RMUC is something that's there, but it's not, it's not showing up on our zoning map, so we'd need to go back and figure out when the original RMUC was applied, what was it applied to? Were there conditions of it being applied? Because I think since those two, the area where the boathouse is now a separate lot. We show it as a separate lot in the land, in the tax maps. We're gonna have to do some digging there, because I think when it was originally applied, it was applied as one unit. So we'll have to look at that, and clarify.
It does say, the RMOC, the definition, constructed on a lot or combination of contiguous lots, so we may
It
be
was.
okay.
Okay, because we're looking at as you're
Right, I can
talking, and
see
it's
that,
talking
yeah.
about residential uses as primary uses and other associated uses, and so I think we need to do a little bit of homework here as well to better understand how it was applied to these properties.
It was part of the old tank farm, is what it was. It was industrial, and the tank farm had to be remediated. I think it was Northeast Petroleum. And then Carrie Lane came through. There was abandonments done just to get this parcel back. And we also ran the sewer line up there. I mean, there is a lot of history, and I'm glad to help with.
It can be understood.
I believe
Ye-
it's Starwood that had applied.
That's good.
Yes. Well, before Starwood bought it, I think they said, it was Aaron Spelling, across the way was also part of the tank farm. It's got a lot of history to it, but. And you're right, there was another lot that came down where the road is down there. And the homeowners association with the villages, and there was Arthur Casey and Andy Ross, I think, were the principals at the time. So, I mean, it comes back. It was a long time ago.
And it was Arthur Casey that applied for that residential.
So it would have been
piece that
part
got
of
completely-
the decision for approving it,
Yes.
they would have gotten.
Yes.
Yeah, that wasn't gonna happen.
As a floating.
So without getting too deep into the history of this, does anybody have, I think, I see two hands go up, but I think Tricia had her hand up before Steve, so.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll-
So I just have a couple of questions. Admittedly, I got a little confused with the seating myself, trying to figure out the numbers there. But in the new seats that you're adding, are you including the new bar seats? Because there's a new,
Yes.
those seats are included in the bar seating both to the north and the south?
So if you were to count the seats in the gray, I believe that comes to 71 seats.
Okay. And the seats, is there a bar on the south side now? I didn't think
No.
there was. Okay, so those seats would also be additional? The
Correct.
bar that's being added on the south side?
Yes. Oh, on the south? No.
No.
No, that'll be the same amount of seating. Right now, that south patio is generally rectangular, but there's an oval to the very south. It's kind of oval. And we're adding some bathrooms that you'll see kind of on the border there, if you could show that, Neil.
Yeah.
So we're adding bathrooms so that you don't have to stand in line in the hallway to go to the bathroom.
But it-
And there's a bar there, right where those bathrooms are. That's why
Okay.
we're putting that bar out to the edge.
Oh, I see, okay. And I know sometimes, the south patio, while it has a temporary awning roof on it, it does have sort of plastic glass sides, correct?
does, yeah.
So is there a plan to eventually be able to use that portion of the restaurant year-round, or at least?
It'll still be a three-season facility, yes.
Okay, so the sides would then be what? The similar kind
Very
of,
similar,
that clear
yeah.
glass,
It's-
I don't know what you call it, icing glass?
It's called icing
The name
glass,
of it is
basically,
exactly,
yeah.
but it would be
Yeah,
that. So it'd be
exactly.
something that rolls up
Yeah.
and rolls down. My only thought on the seat thing, and this is purely a recommendation only, but have you had any discussions? You get your water from North Tiverton Water District?
We do,
Have you had any discussions with them, preliminary discussions?
not at this point.
We have no control over the water district. It's a completely separate government entity.
Right.
But you do need, if and when we go forward and you come back to us with a plan at some point, you would need verification from North Tiverton. And they're anecdotally, they have had some questions about being able to supply certain projects, so I just might recommend that you consider a preliminary conversation with them, just to make sure you don't get too far down the road and they have any kind of issue.
I did read your moratorium on housing units, and the, water demand seemed to be a large portion of that. So we haven't gotten to the phase yet where we've reached out to all the AHJs to confirm capacity, but that certainly is on our list, and I think something we would expect to do either during or before a TRC meeting, but we're aware of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only bringing it up just because, obviously the work that you're doing, you're expending money doing it, and we would not like to see you do more of that if we didn't advise you. Maybe it would just be a good idea to, double check, so. That's it for me, I think. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Steve Clark has was
Yeah, thank you,
next in
Stu.
line.
Yeah, a couple of observations or concerns. One is I think Rosemary already touched on this, is the foot traffic from one side of the road to the other. I mean, you have a situation here where you have the parking lot on one side, restaurant on the other. And I know I go down there quite often, I guess. And at night, it's hard to see. The lighting down there is not great, right in the crosswalk area. So if you could, take a look at that and see what you can do to make that a safe situation. I know people come out of the parking lot on foot, and they're going to take, a straight line to wherever they want to go. They're not necessarily going to walk on the crosswalk. So I don't know if you can kind of manage the traffic there with fencing or shrubbery or whatever, and lighting. It's certainly some things that would help make that a safer situation. The other concern observation was I've noticed in your plan that there is some living space or a second floor of some sort for employees, and I'm just wondering with that up there, how much higher will this building be than the current building? It wasn't readily evident from looking at the plans, but it's something that I'm sure is going to be an issue that'll be looked at very closely at some point, because as you said, you're sensitive to the site channels, or whatever you call them, for the people that are up there behind you. So that's going to be a sensitive subject as we go down the road here.
Yeah, of course. And to answer your question, the second floor space is support space. There's storage in that area. We're using some of that second floor space to accommodate equipment needs for the kitchen. We're intending on taking as much of the equipment as, well, all of it essentially, and placing it indoors rather than outdoors. And the reason is we're trying to be sensitive to air pollution. We don't want to create any more outdoor noise than exists currently. In fact, we're going to try to reduce the amount of outdoor noise as a part of these improvements. If you look at this rendering, you can see that the main ridge on the building is the existing ridge of this building. So although we're slightly expanding that upper level area to increase storage and give the staff a space to be, a place to put down their lunchbox when they come to work, in a restroom that they don't have to fight customers to use. It's really done modestly, minimal needs to accommodate the proposed design, but there is no increase in ridge height. What you see on top of the building is a sensitive approach to trying to accommodate the draw and exhaust of air, which accommodates the mechanical systems that we need. But overall, there will not be an increase in building ridge height. And there is no living facility. I think you mentioned housing. There's no housing of any
I
sort.
didn't mean to, wrong word, but
Okay.
I could see that there was something up there that, for the employees, as you pointed out.
Of course.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And on the front of the crosswalk, I mean, unfortunately, we can't put the parking lot and the building on the same side, but everything short of that, I think we're thinking of doing to stripe that crosswalk, illuminate it, and really just try to redefine that entry so it's safer and more efficient all around. That's
All right. One other thing that could be a little more involved is if the entrance to the parking lot was before the crosswalk. Right now, it's the other way around.
We're looking at some options. The grades make that quite difficult because of that that really steep slope as you come down Schooner Drive. So we're investigating a few different alternatives. Right now, that one hasn't panned out, but we are trying everything we can.
One thing that's not represented here, but is a reality of this improved design, if you can imagine coming down there where you do have that entrance to the parking lot, there's actually a rather large kind of open asphaltic area with a big turnaround as you're entering the building itself. And that will be tightened up. And what you see displayed here is a much shorter crosswalk across the width of the drive itself, with a much more direct connection between that parking lot area and the new reception area. So I think it will clarify the walking areas much more directly and make that a safer way to pass across the street.
Tricia?
I have one other question. What time does your existing liquor license run to? Do you know?
I believe it's 1 o'clock, but we close at 11. And we actually close the kitchen at 10 o'clock during the
Right.
week.
I mean, ultimately, that would be the town council would have to approve the
Right.
expansion of your liquor license, but do you envision with that larger bar area to the north side, that being open late and
No.
potentially a noise problem there?
Definitely not.
So no expansion of hours based on the
No.
expansion of
Yeah.
footprint?
Ashley, did you have a question?
I do. You may not be able to answer this question tonight, but can you go back to the plan that shows the expanded areas? So in order to determine what path you go here for review, I need to understand the size of these, the total size of the expansion, and I also heard upstairs expansion, so that would include what you're providing for upstairs as new space, what the expansion, I would consider the north patio to be an expansion, because I know the floor of it exists, but you're changing essentially the walls and the roof you're swapping those out for something more permanent.
And can we define, are we talking about maybe both, but literal building coverage, or are we talking about gross floor area that's
Talking about
leasable?
floor
Okay.
area of expanded or modified space, because that's the trigger for certain review processes, and we need to understand that so that I can give you direction after you leave concept review where you go next.
Okay, I
So
mean,
it would need to include the kitchen area that's basically, I think, everything that's in gray. It seems, I mean, certainly willing to discuss that with you. If you have questions, we can work through that.
yeah, and maybe gray on this plan. So this shows the expansion of, at least on the first floor, the space out front, the space to the north. This is covered by a roof and, three-sided walls. I'm not sure if that, maybe the additional area, but
Well,
That's
we can
an
give you the
awning.
stats.
to
yeah.
that point, though, I think that it's like a tent, like an awning
Yes.
now. This is gonna go to a hard roof structure with similar walls, but I think, anyway, we can talk about that, but I need to understand the size of all of these different areas and what the total is,
Okay.
so that I can give you guidance.
That doesn't show us.
What is your threshold? Is this a 50% expansion or greater? What are
Well,
we-
it's not my threshold,
Or
but.
the threshold, excuse me, sorry, of course.
Going by the
Well,
statute, you know.
there are a couple of, there's a couple of thresholds, and I think there's a 7,500 square foot threshold that's the difference between minor land development and major land development, but there's also DPR. We need to understand the footprint of the floor area that's expanding, both downstairs and upstairs, and then also it would be helpful to understand the percentage of expansion, so that if we have both of those numbers, we'll be able to figure that out and give you guidance.
Fantastic. And that's, right, one of the big questions we hope to answer, even if it's not tonight, but over the next couple weeks is, because this is a, relatively speaking, big ship and needs advanced planning, help us define our permit path. That's really what we could use help with on our
Yeah,
front.
and we can do that. Those are the two things that I really need to understand from you, is that square footage of expansion area on both floors, downstairs and upstairs, and then if an understanding of the percentage of expansion of the existing floor area. And then with those numbers, I can give you guidance.
Okay, fantastic.
The second floor area that exists now, part of it is being used for storage, mostly for storage and a very small office area. So when we do this expansion, that would be still considered existing, and if we're adding.
If you're adding to the
another 10
existing
feet,
space, then
right.
I just need to know what you're adding to that
addition, right.
space. So whatever you're using now,
Right.
You know, I need the difference between what you're using
Okay.
now and what you're intending to use at the, you know, if you were to build this out.
Got it. Makes sense.
Yeah, no.
That's easy.
Chris?
One thing is, you guys do a good job down there in the front, but if you're gonna be changing crosswalks and compressing some of the pathways, the trucks, the delivery trucks, how's that gonna impact?
The trucks will have to pull
Trucks.
past the restaurant, and they'll be hand trucking in so that they're a safe distance away from any of the parking. And our deliveries are generally before we even open.
You guys usually schedule around it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Same thing with trash.
Yeah, we don't even allow them, so if someone were to try and deliver during service, we'd send them away.
Gotcha.
Yes, Dick?
Yeah, I just have a comment. I think this traffic flow thing is gonna be a constant thorn in your side, you know, that you may be able to solve early. You see cars trying, as they approach the front door in that big turnaround spot, that really appears, if you haven't been there, it looks like that road goes around the restaurant.
Right.
And they'll head down in that thing, and then you'll get a couple of cars, and it interferes with the people coming across in the crosswalks. And I think just basically, if that got solved, it would solve a lot of the problems that exist now, if somehow we can fix that traffic flow.
I think
Keep
we
them out of
address
each other.
that with landscaping so that it becomes obvious that you
Yeah.
can't drive down there. And that's actually a kind of a sore issue for me. I don't like seeing the delivery trucks go down that path, and they do.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly trying to get them to just stay in the street.
We are planning on removing that. It's on screen behind you, this sort of kind of awkward teardrop. So that's the existing condition right now. And again, a few different options we're playing around with, but, you know, we are planning on infilling that with block so that it's a road and it's not confusing, you know. It's still bi-directional, but it's not confusing, so there's no left into the patio.
Do you have any plans for the north, where the dock is? And,
Nothing at this
No,
time,
be-
no.
because there is a, with the CRMC, I guess it was, said there's a hot spot up there. When you're doing your research with the state, check that out too.
A hotspot, there are a couple ELURs that are recorded, if that's what you're referring to, the environmental land use restrictions. Those are in the record. I'm not sure if that's what you mean by hotspot.
That's what they called them.
Okay, fair enough, yes. Yeah, just a different term, but yes, we are aware of those, and those are recorded on the old survey plans. And we're some distance away from them.
I just wondered if, you know, you're having additional parking if you use the docks up above in the north.
Yeah, I think,
I know fishermen go up there because I've been down there when they've been fishing.
yeah, and I think the 35 spaces, I mean, honestly, it was a very robust amount of parking spaces. I don't, you know, I go there frequently enough, I can't say I've seen, you know, the contention for, you know, it's not like you're going into downtown Newport
It's the
or something.
configuration that bothers me.
Right, so, and I think, you know, to the chair's earlier point, you know, I think the grass pave is probably the most, you know, or least impactful surface we can put, and it'll look like grass. So I think I'm generally not a huge fan of it for serviceability, but I think this is one of the rare cases where it actually works, where it's a seasonal thing. So I think we've got the bones for a better parking solution here.
I think we would also need to work to try and re-educate the folks that come down and fish, where the relationship with the community and the folks that love to fish there is excellent, but they park right there in the road. And so those spaces that were dedicated for public access are actually still marked. They didn't even realize they were there, and there's a sign there that we'll mark it better and have a conversation with the folks that love to come down and fish. Maybe they can drop their tackle off and then go park, and so I think it's just being, you know, kind of working together on that.
What is this?
Oh, That's the dumpster facilities, and there's a,
Transformer.
yeah, oh,
There's-
are you pointing to a transformer? or
I
there's
don't
a-
know.
That's the
Trash.
transformer.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, 'cause we
My,
really
my
use that.
suggestion was to move your entrance to be kind of like centrally located to the parking lot, because now you're expanding the parking area, and if you shifted that entrance, basically kind of right where the transformer is, which won't work, but maybe even to the other side of it, you might solve a couple of different problems. One is that you'd have people crossing the street further away from the entrance to the parking area. You'd also have people who are using it for public access, maybe making that parking a little more accessible, because the entrance would be directly across from the pier as opposed to further away, and it might make that parking lot feel more accessible as opposed to like a private lot that's not for the pier as well. It just feels like the entrance to the parking area where it is, if you moved it to the other side of the transformer, kind of where you have that crosswalk, and then you kept your crossing where it is, you would be separating the parking entrance from the crossing, and you would also be kind of making the access to the parking more central and feel more like, accessible to also the pier, and maybe people would park there more to use the pier instead of parking in the street. Just an idea. I was hoping that was just dumpsters and not a
We'll
transformer.
have to figure out the handicap. Right now, the handicap parking is further to the north, and it's difficult. And I don't
Yeah.
understand why they were put there in the first place. We're proposing to get them close to the restaurant, and so we need to be able to get them safely across the street. That's why
Yeah.
we kind of took that approach. Again, it's a smaller population, but they're the most vulnerable.
No, I mean, you raise a good point. And, I mean, it's not always about proximity either for handicap parking. There's a delicate balance there between making sure that it's an easy path. If it's a little bit longer, but it's really easy because it's clearly marked and it's nicely paved and it's, very easily to go across, to traverse the surface of the path to get there, maybe there's a little bit of a trade-off. I don't know. Just something to think about and consider.
Not to be too inquisitive, what is this existing shed used for?
Just for furniture,
Just for furniture
tables and
storage?
chairs, yeah.
I think that there are a lot of logistical issues that we can be working on and discuss in the future. But thank you for coming, and I think you've found that you had a very positive response from the planning board. We view the Boathouse Restaurant as a very nice business to have in town. We wish you well and look forward to working with you in the future. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, we appreciate your support.
Thank you.
So the next item on our agenda was canceled earlier today, and that had to do with Phase 2 of Stafford View Farm on Bulgamarsh Road near Bliss Four Corners. And I believe the applicant, Chris Harkins, has requested to continue that discussion to our September 10 meeting. So I think all we need to do on this particular item is to extend the agenda item. We're now talking about Stafford View
Yep.
Farm. So do we need a vote to do that?
Yes,
Would you like a vote? So I would,
we'll just continue with Stafford View.
Well, he's-
Next month.
Okay, but he's talking about, well, maybe I'm
Not the time clock, just the meeting.
yeah,
There's no time clock.
there's no time clock, of course.
There is.
And there's no public hearing.
For
It's
you.
my time clock,
Right,
not
so-
theirs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and there's no public hearing either, so, but we're just gonna continue this agenda item which is Phase 2 of Stafford View Farm, and whether or not it is still vested, or whether they need to come back and more or less start from scratch. We will continue this item to our September 10 agenda. That's my motion to extend the item. And do we have a second? We have a second from Chris Shriver. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All of those in favor? Unanimous. So that brings us now to planning board business. And the first item under planning board business, which is 4A, is a public hearing on a new conservation development set of regulations that would be part of our land development and subdivision regulations document. And this is an advertised public hearing, so I think I should open the public hearing, and we will be happy to hear from the public. But I think the best way to deal with this, Ashley, would you care to walk everybody, not only the planning board, but the live audience and the viewing audience through what we are doing here in these regulations, and in particular, the yield plan to determine density, the protection of open space, and the 10-step process for the site design that protects environmental resources. So those are, I think, the three big ticket items in the regulations. So if you could sort of summarize that.
Let's start to put them up.
And so Todd is actually going to put a summary of the regulations up on the screen for everybody to see.
So just a brief overview while Todd is bringing that up. This is the component to the zoning ordinance amendments that were adopted back in June, where this is the subdivision piece of it that explains how conservation development is, how an application under conservation development is essentially processed. So we've added a couple of definitions here. We've added a definition for yield plan, because that is a requirement under conservation development, is to develop a yield plan, so we had to define that. And then we provide the 10-step process for conservation development, which is a site analysis process that is intended to identify the land on the, or the areas on the property that are most worthy of protection for different reasons, whether that's scenic value, wildlife value, water resource value, all of those things. And there's an analysis that happens through the 10-step process that identifies that area and then looks at the land that remains and essentially develops the site plan for development on the remaining property, so that the land that has the highest quality in terms of protection gets protected as open space. And the marginal land is the land that's developed for residential development. And so this is the idea behind this section, is that conservation development, although you may end up with varying lot sizes and lot sizes that are smaller than the underlying zoning district, the overall density of the development is the same as if it were developed conventionally, which is the purpose of the yield plan. So anyone applying through conservation development essentially has to show the planning board a yield plan of a conventional development. This is how many lots I could yield under normal, subdivision and dimensional requirements. That yield is the number then that they get to take forward and design the conservation development on. And so when you take 50% of the property and you preserve that land, you're putting the same number of lots on essentially half the land. Those lots are gonna get smaller, they can vary in size, but again, density neutral from a conventional subdivision. So if you would have gotten 8, you're gonna get 8. It's just you shrink the lot sizes, bring those developments together, and essentially impact less land, which environmentally has less impacts. There's less road, there's less drainage, there's really less of everything. It costs less money for the developer, it costs less money for the town because it's less roadway to maintain, it's less stormwater infrastructure to maintain, costs less to develop because they have to build less road and they have to build less stormwater infrastructure. But again, density neutral, 8 conventionally, 8 under conservation development. It's about design and where those lots are located on the property. Can you scroll for me, please? If you just keep going, I just want to make sure I cover. So this talks about the purpose, which we went through. I just want to make sure that I cover everything. So this applies to all developments of 4 units or more.
Anywhere in town.
Yes. Again, dimensionally, you will end up with smaller lot sizes. In some cases, they don't all have to be smaller. It's up to the applicant to kind of figure that out. With the land that's not preserved as open space, they are free to design, within that. And like I said, vary lot sizes, have some small, have some larger. It also provides a lot of variety, whereas traditionally, you do a subdivision now in a 2-acre zoning district and almost everybody's getting 2 acres and everything kind of looks cookie cutter and the same. This'll add variety. Yeah.
And the standards, I'm sorry, the dimensional standards are adjusted.
Yes.
And I know you guys are absolutely saying this, but when I was doing the FAQs, I just want to say it in like as layman terms as possible. So let's say it's an R, like somebody's doing a development in an R120.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and so in reality, if they have not all of those 8 structures have to be on a 120 lot in this cut, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
So not all of the lots will end up on not all of the houses will end up on a 120,000 square foot lot. You'll end up with the same number of houses in the end, so you're density neutral, but you're going to end up with smaller lot sizes because the intent is to impact as little of the property as possible to preserve all of those natural resources. So the language that we've added to your subdivision regulations lays out the requirements, it lays out the design process. And like I said, it's a 10-step process, which is outlined in this section here. And really that 10-step process, a lot of that work is already happening as part of a conventional subdivision. It's just we're kind of doing it backwards. We're looking at the value, the environmental value of the land, and we're extracting that from the equation first, as opposed to kind of doing things the opposite way, which is typically you just lay out the lots on the entire property. So a lot of what is required to go through the 10-step process is information that an applicant is going to have to provide in some form or another through the process anyway under conventional development. We're just using the information in a different way. We're doing that analysis with them, and we're preserving that land that has the highest value. Like I said, we're kind of flipping conventional subdivision on its head here and doing this differently. But again, and the way that the 10-step process is laid out is that a lot of the information that's needed for the site analysis up front is readily available information. They're gonna go pick this stuff up off of our, online GIS or RIGIS data that they can pull and map relatively easily. So there's no huge heavy lifting involved in doing this 10-step process that they wouldn't normally be doing under a regular conventional subdivision. It's all like readily accessible, easily accessible information that they can map easily.
We didn't steal this process.
We didn't make
invent it.
this.
We
No,
stole
we
it
did
from
not.
DEM.
We did not invent this. This has been around for, I don't know, 20 years or more. DEM pushed pretty hard 15 years ago or so, maybe a little bit longer. They created a design manual that walks you through the process and really explains the process to municipalities. I think we decided there's 20,
Almost 20.
19, 20 municipalities that implement some form of conservation development, whether it's mandatory or optional or, and what the triggers are different as well. But it is something that a lot of municipalities in Rhode Island have embraced. It just makes a lot of sense. But this is the 10-step process laid out in the regulations, and then talk specifically about some mapping requirements. I think we've covered everything at a relatively high level. I'm happy to answer specific questions if anyone has them. There is an open space requirement that goes with this. So 50% of the property has to be preserved as open space. That's a minimum. If they want to preserve more, they certainly can. But like I said, that's part of that site analysis, is first determining where it's best to preserve instead of first determining where it's best to develop.
So I'd just like to explain that, that we have a zoning code, which is a statute, a law, but then we have to implement that zoning code with specific recommendations and steps, process steps. And so we have another document which is almost as important as our zoning code, which is called the Land Development and Subdivision Regulations. And that's a document that the planning board controls, not town council. And that's what we're doing tonight. We are adding conservation development. Town council added conservation development to the zoning code on June 24. Now, we're taking the next step, which is required under law, to then follow up with specific standards and regulations, specific regulations to implement our new conservation development program. And I'd like to remind the board that we will be setting up a workshop between the board and Scott Millar, who is formerly of Grow Smart Rhode Island, and also was a high-level employee of Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management. And he'll be coming in at some point in the future to walk us through the process so that we have a better understanding of that. And that will probably be a public, open to the public, anybody who wants to. Having said that, this is a public hearing, so any member of the public can ask a question, and Ashley, I'm sure, will be happy to field that. And any member of the planning board can ask a question or make a comment. So I think Bill Gerlach is.
Yeah, just a quick
raising his hand.
question. Can someone just refresh my memory? Is it now Article 26, which is the conservation development being added to the zoning ordinance? Because when you go out to the zoning ordinance now, it stops at 25.
Then my answer would be yes. And Unicode will be updating it shortly.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
not there yet in
Okay.
Unicode, but it's officially adopted by the town. Unicode lags behind. They have to get it, and then they have to codify it and add it, and so
Okay.
it's not always there right away.
Okay, that's what I figured. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you.
And no further further subdivision if you use this of the property. You know how we have it now, like in rural residential, no further subdivision can take place.
You would have a recorded plan dedicating 50% of the land to open space, and they couldn't change it, those plans without going through the administrative process to change a final plan. So
No
What
further
else?
subdivision.
it would be a change to a final plan that they could apply
Is it
for.
allowable? Because we can't do it in rural residential. It says it in there.
Right, but, so, I'll say that with rural residential, there is it's like a horse trading kind of thing. Like, they don't have to build a town road, you don't have to get a town road. They get, half the density, you get
Correct.
half the lots. Like, there's a back and forth there and a trading off, and typically with residential compounds, there is a clause that will say that if you develop by residential compound, there will be no further subdivision of the property. That's not traditionally something that you would put into conservation development, although to Todd's point, if I use my entire lot to satisfy the 50% open space and all of my house lots,
Right.
what's left? I've got 50% as preserved, protected, open space by deed. I mean, you'd have to go and somehow get that amended. I wouldn't want to restrict it where somebody had, 100 acres and came in and split that 100 acres into two 50-acre parcels and then did a compound on one, and then wouldn't want to put a restriction on the remaining, that's still, viable property for development. So I hear what you're saying, but I don't know how we would,
Rosemary, are you
Do
thinking
that.
like, for example, let's say there was, 15 acres or whatever, and they did a conservation development, and you could get 8 houses, and a bunch of them were on half acres, but there was one that had like 5 acres, right? That they compounded, they developed that one with 5 acres. Could that one, is that what you're saying, is that what you're asking?
Could that be
size
further
acre
subdivided?
Further subdivided as a rural compound later?
No, I'm just using it as a comparison of what we did in rural residential. We had the clause in there. I don't know. And it stays on the tax roll too. The open space stays on the tax roll, correct?
Yeah, but it's gonna be taxed different. It's not gonna be taxed
Like
as,
the homeowners are.
yeah, it would be taxed as open space, cause it's open, it's deed restricted, open
Right,
space.
as long as we get some revenue from it, because there was some speculation in the past that the open spaces come off the tax roll.
I can't, I'm stepping a little outside my comfort zone here and talking about taxation, but it should be the same as if a homeowners association owned
Owns it.
Yeah, that's exactly.
land.
It
It's the
determines
same thing, right? It would
It's
be
open
the,
space.
yeah.
If they
Taxes
turned it
open
over to the town, then it would go off the tax roll.
Ownership wise, yes. If the town actually took
Right.
possession,
It had the management plan.
that would be different, but it's the way it's drafted now, it's a deed restriction. Well, I do think that they can transfer it
Yeah.
If the town accepts.
if the town accepts
If
it.
they- yeah, the
But if
council-
it stays as part of the homeowners association, or if there's a conservation easement to some entity, but the ownership is retained by the,
But here's the point. Town council's already approved this in the zoning ordinance.
Right.
The
It is
transfer
what
of
it is.
50%. This is how we implement the zoning ordinance.
this is the process that you go through
Right.
now.
So it's already been determined. If you want to change the zoning ordinance, then we can talk about that.
So this is a public hearing, so I'm inviting members of the public, if anybody has any questions or comments about these subdivision regulations that will implement our new conservation development program, step up to the mic and introduce yourself, and we will do our best to answer your question or respond to your comment. Sue, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I have markups.
Sue, come up and introduce yourself.
Susan Anderson, I have markups on my copy from our zoning revision committee, and I'm not,
Of
I mean-
the subdivision regulations?
yeah,
No, we didn't.
yeah.
I'm not sure
Because I
why
have,
the zoning
instead
committee
of the
would-
planning board, it said permitting authority, and then, you added stuff, you crossed some stuff out.
To the conservation regulations?
Yeah, land development subdivision regulations.
Ours too.
We
Like
never
under
t-
maximum density, there's a lot of changes in that.
The zoning committee
We
discussed
never, the
conservation.
zoning committee never took up subdivision regulations. We discussed
Well,
conservation
then maybe I
development, but we
did, maybe I
never,
took notes from when you guys discussed it last.
it could be, yeah, it could have been from one of our meetings, but we didn't take it up.
Yeah, I do not have that. I have, it's actually not dated. It's not
Yeah, mine
dated,
isn't dated either.
but it doesn't have any
I got track changes.
track changes or anything like that. It's a
Well,
clean document.
it looks like the file is dated. If I'm reading the file name, it appears to be May 16th of 2024.
I just want to make sure that you've got the changes that you haven't already discussed, or somebody had already discussed that I marked up.
I can't open the downloaded one.
The track changes.
Yeah, I got track.
Stu doesn't have it.
So, Todd and Ed, what are we approving?
Well, it would be the version that we had in the packets, so.
Well, it seems like there's
Two
two
different
versions.
packets that were handed out
I
as,
can't open the, when I download it,
may
I
be
can't open
three.
it.
Yours doesn't have any, ours have different
When
ones.
I print out the,
It doesn't
Different
show the
tracks.
comments,
Doesn't
it's
always
printing the
show.
clean the copy.
So these might have been resolved.
yes,
Or, adjusted, but they just came out, because this is a PDF.
so Todd, we need your recommendation on how to handle
I
this.
don't know what they say.
It'd be the
'cause
most recent version.
Okay,
I think he did it, it's like add language to ensure that CP design is not based off assumption. We still have, private and audiences, variances, and then all of that, because it looks like it was added.
okay,
Oh,
okay,
now
I think.
Now I opened it.
Okay, so I think we can make a motion to approve the most recent version of the conservation development regulations. So would somebody like to make that motion? Tricia Hilton has made that motion. Ashley, did you? Well, and I second that motion. Now, under Robert's Rules of Order, we can have a discussion on this. Ashley, did you want to make a modification in that motion?
I would just say, because I'm looking at the notes that show up now on this PDF, there's a note in here, like under section 5, section 5, development density. It's got constraints to development are highlighted. It says reference to section and zoning ordinance on calculation for buildable land. It says Article 5, Section 3. It looks like that reference isn't in there. So I would add that.
And then, four under C, you were supposed to add RIDEM.
Yep. So under number
Say the ownership then.
Under number 4, C4, yield plan must be drawn to scale, it says we're supposed to add RIDEM language, so I would add that language. I mean, we're not adding language that we're making up, we're just making references to existing language that look like they didn't get into this draft. I'm just making sure we're catching all of them. So section 23-101D, I'm gonna add the words based on an updated yield plan to the end of that sentence.
A, I also had the maximum number of lots, change that, yeah, okay,
That's changed.
and then C was the permitting authority,
Says that there.
yeah, okay.
So that is changed. I'm just looking for the next one.
And under 23-103 was also permitting authority, A2.
What about at the top of page 11? The note says replace this in, this is section 23-104A.
So I think that conversation was that there were some slight there were some slight differences, so we were gonna just copy and paste from the zoning ordinance. So again, we're not creating new language, we're just inserting the exact language from the zoning ordinance in that section.
Right. And we did away with one, so starting out, multi, yeah, that's good.
And that's it.
Design considerations. A bunch of stuff crossed off there.
Which section, Sue?
Page 14, it is,
So I don't have anything crossed off there.
number 2, item, design considerations. Item 3, they shall be directly viewed, accessible.
We can't do this, Stu.
Middle of page 13.
Number 2,
Yeah, number 2.
design considerations.
So 3 is design, directly accessible, no, it's directly viewed, not accessible. You got that in your comment.
Right, so it's view shed, not direct access. So we'll be changing the words to view shed.
Did away with 4, so that's good, that's 6. Away with 7. Okay, you got all the other changes.
So that's the extent of what we would change.
Thank you, Sue, for calling that to our attention. We have a motion, we have a second. Ashley has modified that motion. And so I think we are ready to vote. Is there any further discussion?
So the modified motion is to accept with the edits as outlined in the comments contained within the file named Conservation Development Sub-Reg Draft 24_0516 parentheses 2.pdf.
Correct.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for that.
Okay. All of those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 2
Against. I
again.
wanna see what I'm doing.
Against. Okay.
Todd,
Yes.
do I have your permission to bring that up under this agenda item?
Yes.
Can we set a date for the training? I've been asked twice. Or give me 2 dates and I'll go back with dates, just so we can, otherwise we're not gonna discuss this until your September meeting. and I think we'd like to do the training soon. And they've asked me twice
It's
when
all
they,
within this regulation
when
that
they're
we're
coming.
discussing. We're okay.
So you're getting trained on the regulation that we're just discussing. I just wanted to know if you could if we could agree on like 2 or 3 dates, then I could take those back to Scott and we could schedule something.
I'm hoping that we can do this after Labor Day. I think a lot of people have vacation plans. They have, friends and family coming in for visiting. They have all kinds of activities going on. So I would say, actually, sometime in September. Would a Saturday morning be good?
I did indicate to him when he asked that it was very likely to be on a Saturday in September. So
A
they're
Saturday-
prepared for that. If I give them a
Saturday.
couple dates, then we could square that up and
Would a
be
Saturday,
done.
and again, we don't have to have a quorum for a workshop, but it would be good to get as many people there as possible. But is a Saturday in September, does that sound, and we're talking probably Saturday morning, right?
I would prefer that.
I would prefer that, Saturday morning starting at 9 o'clock, and I think Scott mentioned 2 hours.
Probably, yeah.
So that's not much of a commitment of time, and it would be very good. I can assure you, Scott Millar knows this stuff backwards and forwards, and he's very good at running that kind of a seminar.
He's also going to bring Jen West with him from the Narragansett Bay Research Reserve, who is an amazing trainer. So you're getting really good people
So-
coming to help you.
So, is that all you need, Ashley?
I just need like 2 dates that you can agree on, or 3 dates, and I'll go back
Okay,
and
how about-
confirm it with them.
How about the 2nd and 3rd Saturdays?
14th is no good for me, so the third Saturday will work.
Okay, the 3rd Saturday?
That's acceptable to everyone.
I could probably do any Saturday except the 14th as well.
What if we gave him the 21st and the 28th?
21st and 28th, I can do that. I probably can't do the 28th, but I can do the 21st.
Well,
21st is the only one I
I can do the
so
21st.
let me try to get the 21st
Okay,
and see if they can do that, and I'll do that immediately so that they can
Yeah, can't-
reserve that
Can't be
time.
here the 7th.
okay, that's good.
Thank you.
That's good. Now, that brings us then to agenda item 4B, which is solar ordinance amendments. So we adopted a new solar ordinance several years ago, but
They're in a public hearing.
we are proposing some amendments. And again, this starts with the planning board. We don't actually make the final
need to close
decision. We
their
just
public
make a
hearing.
recommendation to town council.
We
From
took a
the
vote, hold on. Joe, I'm
subdivision.
sorry. On the subdivision regulations, Ashley is concerned that we didn't close the public hearing.
Yes. The public hearing is closed for the discussion of conservation development.
You had your motion, it was seconded, 7-1 vote, no changes to that?
7 to 2.
7-2, excuse me. No changes to that, correct? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, sorry.
No, thank you.
Okay, so now Todd will run us through the amendments to the solar ordinance.
I should call my friend Ms. Hilton, really, as the impetus for the
What?
solar changes. So, I understand that at your last meeting, you discussed with now Captain, fire captain, changes regarding the ordinance as far as relates to roof lines. I've
Exactly.
made those changes because of the state statute prohibiting you from having 2 stages or 2 types of review. We've changed that to just be major land developments, and we've also made some other, I'm gonna call them technical amendments and consistency amendments to this. I know you had at one time talked about having some solar projects be adopted by special use permit. I spoke with Ms. Hilton about this, and we decided, and look, you guys can do whatever you want to, but what we are presenting is just to have them be permitted in the zones that they're permitted without special use permit, because the conditions to have one even by right are so onerous that I couldn't think of any other conditions for a special use. But we can obviously change it however you want to. This is where we are. This is only for recommendation to the town council.
I would completely agree that the ordinance as written is so specific about requirements that we don't need to put people through the process of a special use permit. Those requirements are already there as part of the ordinance. What we did with Captain Dan Murphy, who was the Tiverton Fire Marshal, and we did this at our last meeting, I believe, is agree to his recommendations to bring our ordinance into total and permanent conformity with the National Fire Protection Association standards, which is sort of the Bible of fire marshals. And so that had to do with setbacks on solar panel arrays on roofs. And then there were some technical items that Todd came across when he was going through that have been cleaned up. So these are not in any sense major amendments. And they don't really change the basic thrust of our existing solar ordinance, which has worked out very, very well and has ended the huge ground solar arrays that we were getting under the first solar ordinance that required whole forests to be clear cut to make room for these monsters. So that's what we're doing, and I would make a motion to approve the amendments to the existing solar ordinance as a recommendation to town council. So we're simply sending these recommendations on to town council, and then they will have a discussion in a public hearing, and they will make a final decision. So, and I think Patricia Hilton seconded. So we have a motion, a second. Do we have a further discussion on solar?
I just want to clarify, so we, just because we did have discussion about this, and I see, Todd, that it is in here, that we are actually not accepting the NFPA word for word. We are leaving in our 18-inch
Yes.
lower edge gutter. So I just wanted to clarify that. It's in there. So,
Right, that was Bill Gerlach's suggestion.
Is that how you wanted it? I did the
we'll
best I
use
could from your video.
Yeah, so this makes sense, and the rationale, just because I can't remember, I know you weren't here, Todd, and I don't remember who's here, is that I understand, like, NFPA, like, they're really thinking about areas of high risk, right? So, like, I lived in Northern California, so having your solar panels to your gutter isn't such a big deal because you don't get rain, right? The amount of rain that we get on a Wednesday would, like, shut down the 101 on a week in September, right? They would shut down schools. And to the point of understanding how water egress happens down a roof, here, if we had gutters going directly to, that could have an impact on, flooding, erosion around people's basements, things of that nature. So this does make sense to me. I just wanted to make sure we were all clear that we are modifying it a little bit.
Yes, we are modifying it a little bit. I should have mentioned that. Okay.
And just a quick point, because I think it's important, and this was part of the discussion, is that the captain had alluded to forthcoming updates to the NFPA standards, and the way that this is written allows us to leverage whatever NFPA standards are in place at the time that the application is made. So we don't have to keep coming back to this every time the NFPA is updated.
Right.
Good point. I failed to say, I asked Ed to send this portion of the ordinance to Captain Murphy for his review. He had no comments.
Okay, great.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. We've had a discussion. Those in favor? And I think we have a unanimous group now. Thank you very much. Thank you, Tricia, for all your work on solar, and thank you, Todd, for all your work on solar. So that brings us to That brings us to agenda item 4C, short-term rental. So back July 2nd, in our July meeting, we had a discussion about short-term rental properties in Tiverton in light of the fact that the state legislature and the governor have now created a new law, a new state law, which is imposed on all Rhode Island municipalities to allow owners of property to develop accessory dwelling units on their property. And I think the fear and the concern is that some of those accessory dwelling units might turn into short-term rentals. And we had Town Council member Mike Burke giving us some good advice on this as well. And I see Mike is in the audience. So Todd has put some language together, and I'm going to call on Todd to explain what we're doing here.
So I went from the concept that you wanted to prohibit short-term rentals, also known as tourist or transient use of residential units. And what we did in consultation with Councilman Burke is prohibit non-owner occupied short-term rentals, prohibited across the board, however, permitting them if they are owner occupied in the residential zones, the R30, 40, 60, 120, in the neighborhood business. We've also added to the prohibited list the non-owner occupied short-term rentals to make it very clear. And then we've gone ahead and set forth very specific provisions which an owner occupied short-term rental operator would have to comply with. That's it. I will also note that Councilman Jay Edwards has recommended 3 different amendments, which I think are good actually, but those include, as a condition of having a short-term rental, requirement for working smoke and CO detectors, the requirement that they state how many parking spaces will be available and where they are located on a site plan, and then that the applicant provide a notarized application to the town clerk.
Yes, and he copied me on that memo as well. And Mike, did you have any comment on that modification? I take it that you're very comfortable with what Todd has put together. Would you like us to include anything that Jay Edwards made these 3 recommendations, which I think are reasonable recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they are. I think they fall in line with what was discussed. And just to give you background, what you have before you is not coming from the council, but it is based on a lot of the hearings that we had and the feedback we had from the public, trying to incorporate as much of that in as possible. I can't say, obviously, what the majority of the council will agree to, but I think one of the things that most members did want to at least attempt to do is allow for owner-occupied short-term rentals, as opposed to those where somebody's buying up a house just for that purpose and it's a business.
Corporations are getting into this
Correct.
business.
Correct. And so those are great, and I had a nice conversation with Trish over the weekend. I think she has some other suggestions as well.
You didn't call me.
Okay.
This was Sunday, come on.
It was Sunday. It was
So-
late.
So Tricia, tell us your suggestions, and then I'll be prepared to make a motion too.
Well, I have a couple questions. I'm wondering if owner occupied needs more definition. I'm not sure, like, what's full-time? Is that 12 months of the year? Is that 6 months of the year? Is that, this is your legal, residence? I feel like especially because this is Tiverton, I hate to say it, we have to be really careful about how we define owner, who qualifies as an owner and what is occupied. And, you know, to that point, I understand it can't be a business entity, but can your house be owned in a trust? Because there are people who, you know, own their houses in the trust for
I know.
whatever reason. So I feel like somebody should determine or make a recommendation, or the council should determine, I'm not sure, what constitutes a full-time owner? You know, are you here 6 months of the year, are you here 9 months of the year, you know? And to Mike's point, I mean, one of the questions that Mike raised was, well, does that mean when it says owner occupied, that you're short-term rentaling out, you're there, but you have a, you know, garage apartment, or you have a, you know, in-law apartment, and you're not leaving, but that's what your short-term rental is. So I feel like there needs to be a decision, and I almost wonder if you have to ask the council for some guidance on this, like what are you looking to do for people who are clearly residents of Tiverton, live here, own houses, and want to give them the opportunity to make a little extra income, not be running, you know, a short-term rental as a business. So that's one thing that really kind of, I just feel like it's not defined enough to know exactly, and I do think sadly we'll probably need some parameters of, you know, proof of permanent residency, or whatever you want to call it, so that, you know, there's some fair way of everybody gets treated the same. So that was one thing. I also thought that we should include something that says a short-term rental cannot be used to host events while it's being used as a short-term rental, so that we don't have people, and we have some facilities like this in town, and it's happened before, where somebody rents out their nice big waterfront estate to somebody for, you know, a week or 10 days, and they're gonna have a big wedding down there, and, you know, the next thing you know, they're applying for a special use permit and an entertainment license. I don't think we wanna have that business be part of the short-term rental thing. I also think that there ought to be, we have the OWTS language in there that says that the number of bedrooms, you know, can't exceed what your OWTS permit is, if you have an OWTS. My experience, and I've rented a lot of Airbnbs and things over the years in this country and in Europe, and sometimes we'd be traveling with a large group, my brothers and their kids and everything else, so there's 10 of us or 12 of us, right? And we're gonna rent a house that's cheaper than a hotel. So you type in that there are 12 people, and you get back like 3-bedroom houses, and you're going, why? Well, that's because they've got
Bunk beds.
but
Pull-out
even
couches.
better, there's pull-out sofas, and there's 2 queen-size pull-out sofas in the den, and then there's a futon in the hallway upstairs. So especially for people who have OWTSs, I think that there should be, and this is really a call for John, but when DEM gives you your OWTS permit on a bedroom-by basis, they clearly state that this is based on 2 people in each bedroom. So I think that there should be, so you don't end up with people having futons and stuff all over the place. Because frankly, I think those are the STRs that tend to be the most trouble, right? Because they're not really bedrooms, and you've got 16 people in a 3-bedroom house. That's when it's gonna, you're more likely to have a hubbub in the neighborhood. There ought to be some language in there about, you know, occupancy per bedroom, and that the sleeping arrangements have to be in a bedroom, not 4 pull-out sofas in the basement. See, I had a couple others here. And I think that that's really a call for the building official. And frankly, I think before you get, at least the first time before you get a permit, it should be inspected. Like, the building official should go through and say, yeah, you got 3 bedrooms and you got 6 twin beds in there, you're good, right? And that's what you can have. And then the last thing I think is that any short-term, anything that becomes a short-term rental, any space that becomes a short-term rental should definitely have a certificate of occupancy, because I would not necessarily like to see somebody putting up a yurt in their backyard on a foundation, right, or a tent, and we're, we've got a composting toilet, and, hey, I can have a shirt, because in other parts of the country, those can be allowed. So I think the structure, whatever it is, whether it's an apartment over the garage, or it was the potting shed that somebody's now turned into an STR, I think that should have to have a certificate of occupancy so that we know it's a legitimate living space, not some space that somebody converted and put a hot plate and a mini fridge and, So I think that those are my thoughts.
So what I could do is, if this is agreeable to you, Mike, is make a recommendation to approve the language that Todd has provided, and further recommend the 3 modifications that Council Member Jay Edwards has provided, and call Town Council's attention to the 5 items that Tricia has mentioned as something that they should think about and look into while they're reviewing the ordinance. And Todd, I guess it would be up to you to modify the ordinance to, if we do this, modify the ordinance to incorporate Jay Edwards' 3 suggestions before we pass that on to Town Council. So that will all be a single package, making it easy for Town Council. So if that sounds like a good way forward, I would make a motion to approve the language that Todd has provided all of us to review on short-term rentals and in accessory dwelling units. Add the 3 suggestions, add into the statutory language, the 3 suggestions that Jay Edwards made, and they had to do with 1, add a requirement for working smoke detectors. 2, the owner must file a site plan showing the number and location of parking spaces. And 3, the application that would be turned into Town Council, the Town Clerk's office, would be notarized. Accompanying this draft language that we would be recommending to Town Council would be a recommendation that Town Council look into 5 additional issues that have cropped up, which include, first of all, number 1 of 5, what constitutes an owner, and what is the definition of owner occupied. 2, a possible prohibition on major potentially disruptive events at short-term rentals, such as big weddings. Number 3, that the bedroom occupancy should be restricted, and all sleeping must be done in bedrooms. 4, that the short-term rental be inspected by the building official. And 5, that this structure that will house the short-term rental have a certificate of occupancy provided by the building official. I see John is hiding in the back row there, but because I've just given you a bigger job to do. So my motion would include those 5 concerns would be passed on to town council so that they can deal with them and discuss them as they see fit, or ignore them as they see fit. So that would be my motion.
I'll second to get to discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion, a second. Now, under Robert's Rules of Order, we have a discussion. Go ahead. Discussion?
Well, I would like to just say one thing. I want to just be careful about how I phrase this, because I think that Todd has given us a good a good definition of owner occupied, right? I think the question I'm asking is more of a philosophical one, which is, what does what I'm saying is, I think the council, for me to understand this and interpret it, needs to decide what they're trying to accomplish with this. And if the goal is to say, we don't want corporations buying STRs, and we don't want people buying them as investments, then owner-occupied means one thing. If the goal is to say, we want to allow the regular citizens to have an opportunity to generate a little extra income every year by being able to rent our houses out for a small period, that's different. So I just am saying that based on that definition, I think the council, I feel like, to get a definition that's gonna be really watertight and not have people trying to skirt around the rules, that's a basic philosophical discussion that has to happen. Then, once the council kind of decides that, then the definition of owner occupied can be much, much sharper and less room for, shenanigans. I think that's what, so I just want to clarify that, because I think it is a good definition, depending on which way you're trying to look at this issue.
Good, because we would have to phrase that correctly in our communication with town council, so that they know exactly what we're talking about.
If that makes any sense to
Yeah,
anybody.
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I'm-
yep. Yes, yes, yes. It's not technical, it's philosophical.
Yeah.
And a bit of a discussion would be a good thing to flesh it out. But I think Mike can also reinforce that idea when it gets to town council and they discuss it, so. Okay, is there any further discussion on ADUs and short-term rentals? Seeing none, all of those in favor of the motion? I think we've got it unanimous. Thank you very much. And so we need to not only pass on Todd's draft ordinance, we also have to have a letter that accompanies that raises the points that Tricia has just gone through. And if anybody would like me to help on that, or, proofread it or whatever. So Ashley and Ed probably are responsible for putting that together, but I'm happy to help it in any way I can.
You should be signing.
Well, doesn't matter. Okay, good. So that brings us to the next agenda item, which is 4E, recommendation from Zoning Revision Committee on new waterfront districts. So that would be,
We skipped 4D.
We
4D
skipped
is
D.
solar
oh, E,
application.
D is solar, so E is the waterfront districts. Okay, so we're up to E.
Are we skipping
We
D?
didn't do D.
What is D? I
Right top
don't,
of the page, still.
I have an earlier version of the agenda.
Item D is solar
checklist.
application
Oh,
checklist,
solar
discussion and
application
possible vote
checklist.
to adopt a checklist for applications presented
that-
under the solar ordinance.
That, I believe, is something that we're giving Ashley to deal with to see if there's anything, to go through the ordinance as amended and to make sure that we have a checklist that we can hand out to applicants or potential applicants so they know what we are looking at. And that's something I think that the planning board would like to defer or refer to staff to handle.
So, somewhere, in addition to the stuff in our regular checklist, somewhere, a long time ago, I pulled a bunch of things that were from other towns' checklists and just put them in a giant pile. I'm happy to help you with that, but, I wasn't sure which one of those were really necessary or, not. 'Cause I'm not the administrative
We can
officer.
set up a time and go through that and
Okay.
refine the list, and then we'll bring it back.
Okay, and I'm happy to, I know I have that list from somewhere, so I'm happy
Okay.
to help you.
Okay? Okay, I think that dispenses with that item. And that then brings us to 4E, which is recommendation from Zoning Revision Committee on new waterfront districts. Are we ready for E? Waterfront? So I would like to actually call on Tricia Hilton to walk us through not, both the new waterfront map, which shows waterfront 1 and waterfront 2. We have a waterfront district now in our zoning, but it doesn't distinguish between heavy usage and light waterfront usage. And so there's a map to discuss. And then there's also a use table that shows what uses are permitted in each of the two waterfront or the two proposed waterfront zones. And I'm calling on Tricia because she is our liaison to the Zoning Revision Committee, which is chaired by Jay Edwards, and that has been working on zoning for months now and have given us a lot of recommendations. Years. And so, and also Ashley has been very active in that process. So, Tricia, did you want to sit at that table and then project, or is Todd
We've
projecting
got
for
the
you?
map up.
I can sit here, but I need can you operate the map?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So walk us through the two districts and what can be done in those two districts. I think that's what people want to hear.
Sure, so just a small amount of background. The objective of looking at the waterfront and potentially creating more than one district is in fact in the community comprehensive plan is a directive that the town was supposed to undertake. So we are following the direction in the comprehensive plan of reviewing the waterfront and in fact, as suggested in there, consider, multiple districts. So we have just one waterfront district right now, which is got a very, very, very limited number of commercial uses, 3 to be exact. Everything else is sort of residential, except, interestingly enough, it actually says that, that residential single-family houses are not permitted. They just go by the nearest residential zone. It's really a really interesting piece of code. So the thought was to look at the waterfront, to review it from basically where Don's Marine is, just a little bit south of Bogle Marsh, all the way north to the Fall River line, and see if there was not an opportunity to create more commercial business that would be compatible with this existing neighborhoods, and lessen the town's reliance on residential property taxes, bring some more commercial into town, but the kind of commercial that would work well on the waterfront, and again, be a good neighbor. So the first thing that meant was, to look at the existing waterfront, and at the very, very top, at the Fall River border, there's a section of waterfront, you'll see it right along the Fall River line up there, that exists now. It's pretty industrial. That is where the gas tanks are. And just to the north of it is the Fall River sewage treatment plant. So it's, that little section right there is pretty industrial. The other portions of the waterfront are, the rest of it is a complete mishmash. It's everything from what you just saw, the boathouse was in here. There's the section underneath the Secundit River Bridge. There's a whole bunch of residential property that's in the waterfront, even though technically single-family houses are not an allowed use there. Then you get down to the Stonebridge area, and there's a mix of waterfront and general commercial, which is really interesting. Further south, you've got some bits and pieces of waterfront and some bits and pieces of general commercial. So what we really did on the zoning update committee was to look at that one northern piece where it's all, you've got the gas tanks, and say, and by the way, no one here is proposing, sort of some giant 300,000 square foot fish canning plant by any stretch of the imagination. But if someone were, for example, to want to build a bigger boatyard or something that was a little bit bigger in scale, that might be an appropriate place for it. The rest of the waterfront then was to consider what uses could we add to the waterfront that were commercial, that would be compatible, would generate a little bit more in property tax revenue, and make our waterfront a little more viable. I mean, we've got basically 15 miles of waterfront, and a great deal of it is developed as residential property. But we do have some that's available. And if you look at Warren or Bristol or some of the other communities, they've done a really good job at opening up their waterfront to businesses in a way that, people enjoy. It brings people into the community. And again, the tax revenue. So that was the reasoning behind creating two different districts. Waterfront 1 is the one that's a little bit more industrial or a little bit, higher use. And that, the only place that is in that same section in North Tiverton along the Fall River border. That doesn't go anyplace else. It's just there where it is today. Then you get to Waterfront 2, and some of these lots are existing waterfront lots. Some of them are general commercial lots that we're recommending be moved out of general commercial and into waterfront. And then there are a small number of additions, one of which is the parcel that Todd is highlighting right now. And that is, it is not the entire parcel. The whole parcel is the Hicks Farm property, which is 90-something acres, I believe. And we are recommending that the westernmost 500 feet of it be converted to Waterfront 2, which is the less intense use. I know that people are aware that the town has been in discussion for 20 years with the family that owns that parcel. Everybody's sort of heard about it. The Open Space Commission, along with the Tiverton Land Trust, is very interested in being able to acquire it. There are ongoing discussions. The Open Space Commission is aware of our recommendation. They have no objections at this point to including that. If it was possible at some point in the future for the town to acquire that property, it could be the entire thing could be rezoned open space. That would be up to the town, but at that point, the ownership of it would belong to the town of Tiverton. Then you've got, another residential section that is zoned residential. It's going to stay that way until you get down to, there's the boathouse. And we saw those folks in here a little bit earlier. There is the Armonk issue that is there, but it's also zoned waterfront. So it's going to have to be up to Todd and Ashley to resolve the Armonk issue. But that is currently zoned waterfront, and it would be moved into Waterfront 2 instead of plain waterfront. Going south a little bit, again, there are more residential properties until you get down to where the Secundit River Bridge is. Todd, if you go up just a little bit to where the bridge is, can you blow that up at all?
More?
So it's a little hard to see, but there are some parcels already underneath around the Secundit River Bridge. There's only one that we're recommending, well, actually, I take it back. We're recommending including DEM's parking lot, right, which is there for the boat ramp, that get moved out of residential into Waterfront 2. And there's one parcel that is, that currently has a commercial building on it, but it is zoned residential, that would be included in the waterfront. So all of those parcels that you see in blue are existing commercial parcels. None of them are not commercial parcels. But then going south, and you know what, I'm gonna, just so I can do this and I can give you the lots, I'm just gonna open this up on mine here. So I can look at the existing while I talk. Then you get into, again, all those small residential parcels, for example, along Riverside Drive. And going south. And one of the things that we're recommending is that the parcels that are residential along the waterfront, that are zoned waterfront, be moved out of waterfront and moved back into residential. Because right now, they're pre-existing non-conforming in the worst kind of way. Their use is pre-existing non-conforming in the zone. Their lots are pre-existing non-conforming. So it would be really better to move them out of, because they're houses and they're fully developed as houses. And it would be really better to put them back into, a residential use, because then their use is not non-conforming. Many of them will still be dimensionally non-conforming, but, but less so. So that kind of stays there. Let me just see if I can pull this up here. So
And those are the lots that you see, the thin blue line. And we did this by basically Googling our way through the entire waterfront district. And those are all tiny little lots that are either vacant because they're really, really small, or they have a house on them.
yeah, and some of the vacant ones are actually attached to a parcel on
Across
a
the street.
residential parcel on the other side of the street. That's their waterfront access. But it just doesn't make sense to leave them kind of the way they are. For the homeowners themselves, it would be better to be in a residential zone. So the thought is to move them back out, into a residential zone. And then,
Tricia, that's why on this map, we're kind of breaking that blue line.
yes, yes. So they would go back into a residential
So
zone.
that space in between there was all waterfront. And the other discussion that the committee had in talking about those lots is that what is the actual viability of any of them developing as a business? There's zero parking. Some of them don't even have parking for one car for the house, and they park on the street. So they're really not viable to use as anything other than what they're currently being used for.
We're talking about the cottages, what used to be summer cottages on Riverside Drive, and they face Tiverton Basin.
Yeah, and a few of them keep moving down, towards Main Road. The one thing you can't really see, because it's not that great, but right now, even though they're non-conforming uses in the zone, there's this piece of language that says in there, residential uses in the waterfront shall conform to the nearest residential district. So, as you can see there, the nearest residential district, right, was R40. We're actually recommending that they go to R30, because they're less non-conforming that way, maybe only by 10,000 square feet, but that, makes a difference in terms of setbacks. And since they're contiguous, and we have an R30 zone, and by the way, the uses in an R30 zone and an R40 zone for their purposes are completely identical. It's not like...
Dimensionally.
Yeah, dimensionally, it's better for them. So, moving south, you come down until where you get to sort of Standish Boatyard, and the commercial the beginning of the commercial section at, in Stonebridge. Right now today, there's a section of waterfront uses on the water side, right, that go all the way down to Grinnell's. On the other side of the street, there's zoned general commercial. And we're frankly really lucky that we haven't had any sort of general commercial uses that wouldn't really fit down there, go there. So it makes sense to move them into, the waterfront zone and take them out of general commercial. We've actually taken a few out and put them back into R40. That red line, the way they did that, I think it's 300 feet, I'm not positive. But instead of going to the lot lines, they sort of just drew this like, well, we're gonna go 300 feet in from the road and draw a line. So you have residential properties there that are bisected by general commercial, or like one corner of their property is general commercial. We took them out, or are recommending to take them out and just put them back into R40 and let them be residential. But that might be a one that's worth blowing up a little bit, Todd, if you can. The general commercial zone over there, if you change that, the background to
Use the
use the spring
aerial photo.
to use the aerial photo.
If you pull the layer tab out, and then you can lighten the zoning at the top, slide that, to the left. And then you can see underneath, while still keeping the zoning.
More?
Yeah, so there you go. So, you're looking at things like, there you go. So you're looking at things like, the Bank of Newport, you're looking at, across from Coastal Roasters, there are those little businesses there. There's this Sakana, I think it's called Sakana East, the condo development that's in there. Then you've got things like the Red Dory, there's a commercial parking lot behind the Red Dory, you've got the doctor's offices, Paul's House of Flowers that were there. So all of that right now is zoned general commercial, and we're suggesting that we take it out of general commercial, move it into waterfront, and some of those properties are residential now. I mean, they are, but they're in general commercial. But the ones that are kind of bisected by general commercial, we're recommending just take them out and put them back into a residential zone. So there's really kind of an opportunity at Stonebridge. One of the issues is going to be parking, there's no question about it. But at the same time, there is sort of an opportunity for some design standards and maybe a little more of a village feel there. The town's going to have to think about parking. There's a paper street down there that the town can use for parking now, but even doing things like in the off-season, Grinnell's Beach has a big parking lot in the off-season. I don't know that it occurs to anybody to maybe have the town put a sign out in, once the beach is closed for the season that says municipal parking for Stonebridge Village, right? Park there and, walk up and go to Coastal Roasters or walk to one of the shops. So it will take a little bit of thought. Maybe some businesses won't work because there isn't going to be enough parking, but it is a pretty good opportunity, we think, to, upgrade the area a little bit, have some design standards and, create kind of a village feel. So then going south from there, We can go back to the, you can stay in this map, actually, I think, if you want, Todd.
Whatever you want.
I think you can stay in that map, because I think it works. So we,
South?
so then you've got, you know, sort of this residential section that's developed, and you can go all the way down until you get to Evelyn's. We turn the zoning back on, Todd, so we can,
It's on.
It's on.
By Nantucket Road.
It's on, Trish.
You gotta keep
It's
going.
very light, though.
There you go.
okay. So, again, you've got Evelyn's now on the waterfront side, and on the other side, you've got this little hunk of general commercial.
No. This is Black Goose. This is Black Goose. It's not Evelyn's.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
right,
that's
sorry.
yeah, sorry.
We haven't gotten there.
Sorry, that's the Bridgeport Seafood and the Manchester building, which is zoned waterfront, and on the other side where the Black Goose and the other buildings are, that's general commercial. Again, put it all in the waterfront.
It's waterfront, Trish.
This is existing zoning,
That's existing zoning.
so that all stays.
So it all, it all stays.
Well, it
but
stays
the-
waterfront
It all
too.
stays waterfront too, but the part of it that was general commercial becomes waterfront too instead of just general commercial. But there's no new property being added to, no new commercial property being added there. So there is a recommendation to add Evelyn's, which is right now zoned.
Or 40, I
R-
think.
Yeah, R40. And
No,
then-
I'm sorry, 120.
20.
120.
And then across the street, there are two general commercial, two properties that are zoned general commercial. Move those into waterfront. One is the,
Upholstery shop.
yeah,
No.
no, they're right on the corner of Bulger Marsh. One is the building that's got Lack Investments in it, and the other one is the vacant lot that used to be the gas station. I sound like a real Rhode Islander, right? It used to be the gas station. And then going further south a little bit, so there's a recommendation, if you turn the switch to the other, there we go. So a little bit further south, you've got the property where the antique store is, and you've got Don's Marine, and then you've got the White Wine Plaza across the street.
You're too far. Go up.
There you go. So you see those three properties that are
Just below, yep.
just below those
right
three
there.
properties? You've got the property where the antique store is, right along the road. The bigger property, it looks like it's in two pieces, but that's Don's Marine, and then across the street, you've got the White Wine Hill Plaza. So there is a recommendation that those properties be moved into waterfront. So that's the map, that's the recommended map. I don't know if anybody has any questions about the map, or,
That's class 1 water with Nantucket Pond. That's one of my problems. Once you start using that, Don's Marine is storage. It went in as a secondary to the primary. That's why the old house is still there. They went in and it's, once you open that up, you're gonna have more.
well, that's the only parcel that's on the waterfront there. And it is an existing marina. But here's the other.
It's not a marina, it's
What?
storage.
A storage. Well, no, it's and sales, there's storage and sales there.
Sales.
So, but here's the thing. It's CRMC's decision. If CRMC says that's type 1 waters, they don't permit docks into type 1, new docks into type 1 waters. Anything that's there is grandfathered. So, you know, just because we say that that's a waterfront commercial use, they're still subject to all of CRMC's regulations. And if CRMC says, no, you can't add any more docks, no, you can't have bigger docks here, no, you can't put a ramp in, then they can't. I mean, that's, any property anywhere along the waterfront that, you know, is whatever it's zoned, whether it's zoned waterfront or waterfront commercial or residential, it doesn't matter what it is, you're gonna have to, you know, abide by CRMC's regulations. Just because we say it could be a commercial use here, doesn't mean that CRMC is gonna let them do it. And I mean, that's an existing viable business right now that's zoned residential.
All right.
Anybody else on the map, anything?
Nope.
All right. One thing I know some people have asked about, can you go back up to the Hicks property, Todd? Would you do that?
On the existing map?
Yeah, on the existing map is good. Perfect.
Okay.
So that's the Hicks property. Just so people are aware, because some people have asked, see the lot below where it says 160 and 163? That long strip right there, that also belongs to the family who owns the bigger lot. There's no discussion about changing that from residential. So those parcels that they own there would stay residential. And then there's a paper street that's actually to the north of that still. So there is a not inconsiderate buffer between anything that would happen on that R30, what's now the R30 property, and the back of Summerfield Lane. So there's no discussion about including that other portion of the Hicks property or the paper street. Into the zoning map. Does anybody have any questions about the map?
None from me.
So should we talk about the uses then?
Sure.
Yeah. Uses and dimensions.
Uses and dimensions. So Ed, can you flip the lights on? So, so does everybody have some?
Do you want to bring up the use table?
Yeah, sure. I will say it is not an easy exercise, having been through this,
Go ahead, sorry.
to sort out the special use criteria versus the performance standards. That's hard. I mean, it's really complicated. So, the zoning update committee didn't necessarily come to a firm decision on this has to be the special use criteria. what we came up with were things that we think this needs to be a special use, and we think this is part of the criteria, or it needs a performance standard. We're not, it's really difficult. So what we have here now is a list of suggested uses, and then some suggested special use criteria or performance standards, and then I took the ones that the zoning update committee did, and then I took the ones that Ashley's firm did, if they related to any of these uses, and put it all together. But we are gonna have to figure this out. That's like our next thing. So, so very quickly, residential uses, and again, we have all those houses in the waterfront that where they're not allowed, but, that's gonna stay that way, so, no change there. The one first change is the possibility of doing mixed-use residential. But there's a performance criteria to this, which would be that, the mixed-use residential, living space could only be on an upper floor, so the first floor would have to be, commercial. And the residential floor area could not exceed 50% of the floor area dedicated to the non-residential floor area. So the idea isn't to encourage somebody to build a commercial building that's just a big box, right? So you could have half the space upstairs. So if somebody wants to put a business in and live above the shop, great. If somebody wants to build a business or maybe have 1 or 2 apartments, because we're not talking about, gargantuan buildings here. But there would be a limit there. If there are 4 or more residential units, then it would require a connection to public water and to public sewer. And that was suggested as a performance criteria. But I'm counting on Todd and Ashley to help here on should this be a performance criteria or a special use permit?
First of all, is it both waterfront districts?
Yep. I'm not sure anybody's gonna build an apartment overlooking the gas tanks, but what the heck, you never know. So, I don't know, I mean,
It comes down to whether or not you want somebody to be able to vary it, alter it, forego it.
maybe that should be a special use permit then? I don't,
In any of our other exercises outside of the proposed 2 waterfront districts, did we have the requirement to connect to public water and or public sewer present, and how did we handle it there?
we do in conservation development.
Yeah.
So
It's actually
perhaps
nice.
for consistency, we take the same approach here.
Okay. Is everybody okay? And if you all have some other thing that you think we should be worried about, you should be saying, like, by the way, everybody said parking was a thing. For every single thing on this list, parking. But that's gotta be addressed through the rewrite of the parking ordinance with John back there. So everybody knows the parking for all of these. So that one's, so is this a sort, do we wanna vote on these one at a time, or do we wanna just go through the whole thing and either recommend it or not recommend it at the end of the day?
I don't think we have time to go through every little item. I think we're educating the board and also anybody in the public who is either here tonight or viewing this as to what we're attempting to do. And I think we will be making a vote to send it to town council.
Okay, so, I'm gonna skip through the just permitted things then, in case anybody wants to ask, and then the next thing is, the bed and breakfast, which is a special use permit also. And this was sort of an interesting thing, and I'm not sure if we can, completely do this, but no one wanted people building houses in this limited amount of commercial waterfront space that we have, and saying, I'm building a bed and breakfast, and then they build themselves a nice 4-bedroom house and they never make it a bed and breakfast. So there was this thought that, that it would be a special use criteria, it would have to be owner or operator occupied, that it would have to have a minimum of 4 ensuite bedrooms, for let, plus the owner suite, and a minimum of 1 off-street parking space per bedroom. So essentially, it would be purpose-built to be a bed and breakfast, not just somebody's 4-bedroom house. And that would be a special use criteria. Any comments?
Trish, where's that captured in the document?
So they're in notes. Did you get this on my little cheat sheet thing?
I don't think so.
Your short document?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's called Waterfront Short.
Oh, yes. Yeah. No. I have that. I'm not seeing.
If you go down to the last pages,
Yeah.
all of the text in there are those criteria for those specific uses.
Okay, now I see it. Okay, thank you.
Motel or hotel, nobody wants a motel. Would be okay with a hotel, but this is one of these where Ashley's firm had a lot of special use criteria suggestions, and I don't know which ones we wanna keep. The zoning update committee said it had to have public water and sewer. I don't know. We didn't really go through the ones from Ashley's firm, but I don't know. I mean, the thing is, we can't send this to the council like this. We have to send this to the council with like, this is our recommendation. So we have to go through these and say what we want here.
Okay.
Tricia,
Yes,
correct me if I'm wrong, go back to the bed and breakfast.
yes.
My recollection, we've only had one bed and breakfast get licensed in the town in all these years.
Well, I don't think they get licensed. They're,
Oh, they went to the zoning board.
right.
Yeah.
Well, I think so.
Yeah, and you know where it is.
Yes.
Sarah Bank.
But, I mean, you know, a bed and breakfast could be a very nice waterfront little business, right?
Question about K, and it might just be like any Kathleen, I don't understand what this is. Is this like, someone is turning their home into like a little residential arts and crafts place, like?
No, that's permitted everywhere, but,
That's existing language.
it's existing language, but yeah, basically.
It's home occupation.
Yeah.
Right. So
Like if you're an
are
artist,
the
if you're an
waterfront
artist and you have a studio at home, or you do pottery at home, or like, you know,
Yeah.
This is not that you convert your residence into, this is that a portion of your residence is used for running your home-based business.
So, and I know this is gonna sound dumb, but like A, B, and C kind of go against this, right? Because unless they're, and this is, current use, like the grandfathered in situation, right? Where somebody is using an existing single-family, two-family dwelling that is out of code, they can do this in the waterfront.
yes, but keep in mind, if you have mixed-use residential,
This can also.
then you can do that.
Gotcha.
So if you
Okay.
have a, you know,
100%
commercial
would
building
be.
and your apartment's upstairs and you're an artist and
You
you're
can
like,
do this there.
yeah.
It took me a hot second to get there, I apologize.
yeah. So, but we need to think about the hotel criteria here. Like, What do people want to have in there?
Do we, again, I'll go back to my earlier comment, we've discussed criteria for hotels elsewhere in previous exercises. Sure we did.
Did we address the height issue though? You're only allowed to go 3 stories in town.
Going back to some of our workshop stuff, we talked about
Saturdays in
hotels.
February.
Saturdays in February.
Right, but we
Like 3
didn't-
of them.
Right, but we never really, we talked about them, but we never really said, okay, this is what we want. If we did, I can't find any record of it.
But Ashley, I thought.
So we went through the use table.
Yeah.
Multiple Saturdays, section by section. You guys went
Correct.
through, and everything that you kept as special use permits, you
We
gave me
defined.
direction, and
Yep.
you said, we want specific and objective criteria for these things.
Yep.
Just topics, these, specific issues. And then we developed a draft of specific and objective criteria for every special use permit that you left in there.
But we haven't been through those, we haven't gone.
You haven't gone through what we drafted
Right.
Okay.
as the specific and objective
Okay.
criteria. So you told us what topics you wanted to cover, we developed a draft for it, but we have not gone through that actual draft. And I have to say, if you're confused, so am I, because we're tinkering in multiple places in the zoning ordinance by multiple groups at the same time, and you're seeing I'm doing my best to keep it all in one place, because if not, it's not gonna be manageable to bring all of those pieces back together. So the waterfront stuff that we added, I keep trying to add it to the same document so that we have this running document of changes. And what we're gonna have to do, and thank you, because you went halfway there, is that when you agree on the waterfront stuff, that's gonna have to be by itself, basically, and go to the council by itself.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
in drafting it, as we've been talking, I'm trying to keep it all in one place, because like I said, if not, I'm gonna be trying to put back together 17 pieces that it's gonna get really confusing. So it's confusing on this side to make it less confusing on the flip side, I guess, is what I'm saying. So if you guys go through this and say, yes, we agree, change this, yes, we agree, change this, then I can produce the document from that just isolates the waterfront changes. You're seeing it in context with a lot of other stuff right now, but if we just focus on the waterfront part of it, I'll at least have what I need there to make a document that goes to the council for that change to get adopted. It's like 100
Understood.
moving parts that
No,
are.
totally agree, and it's a valiant effort nonetheless. I had thought that we had tackled some performance criteria for hotels in the past, and again, my spirit is just, let's not reinvent the wheel and just lift and shift
It's
here.
in here. I took,
But if we don't have that, then my intro comments would be lighting, landscaping,
right.
like,
So here's what I did on this like cheat sheet thing.
yeah, I'm looking at it.
The ones that are from, if you look at the special use criteria, and then there's performance standards, right?
Yep.
If it came from the zoning update committee, it's just there in regular text. If it came from Ashley, it has a W and S in front of the section and it's underlined.
Yes.
So I took the zoning update committee ones and the ones that we did with Ashley and put them all in one pile so that we would have them all together. What we have to do is pick through for these uses in the waterfront, which ones of these we want to keep. Do Do we want to add any others, or do we want to like, and if we get rid of them, it might not be we get rid of them in other places, just
Just the
here at
waterfront. Yep. Okay.
So that's why the
So-
hotel thing, right, which right now says, the zoning update committee said, you know, hotel only. So that's not really a, I don't even know if that's a performance, is that a especially, the zoning update committee does not want a motel. They want a hotel but not a motel. And the way our zoning code reads, it
says
says.
hotel or
Hotel
motel.
or motel. So we're asking Ashley how you write that, so it's only a hotel.
And then the criteria for what a motel or hotel, that's where I didn't see, I had to scroll down, and that's where it is, Bill, the height, the
So
hours,
is there a way to say it's
lighting,
only a
it's all in
hotel,
there.
not?
If we have a definition of a motel and a hotel, which I think we did do as part of the work we did,
It's in here.
Yeah.
right? We did definitions
Yeah.
months ago. If you have a definition between the two, I do think, and please tell me if you disagree, but I think you can, in a district, restrict one or the other by way of a table note,
Okay,
Yes, or just create another line.
or you separate them.
okay. So.
But if we only care about this in the waterfront, I mean, I don't know, do we care about it? Do we care about it other places? I mean, maybe we separate them into two lines.
Well,
But I do think you can restrict one or the other.
I'm just saying that the zoning update committee was okay with a small hotel, not a motel.
Okay.
I think separating them.
Is cleaner.
Probably the cleanest.
That you define them differently, you see them as
Okay.
different items.
So we'll get that. So then the,
So this is, do we do permit hotels in general, are we in general commercial and highway commercial? So we might wanna split them.
I think Todd's idea is the best one. So the special use criteria that Ashley's firm came up with is building footprint limited to 20,000 square feet, building height is limited to 35, staff will be on site 24 hours a day. And then there's a fair amount about circulation plans, although I don't know if we need all of them, but we might. Approval by the fire marshal's kind of like standard, right? That's
That's gonna happen anyhow.
so. we
A
might-
security plan, that makes sense to keep in there.
A security plan. So are we okay with this and we say, yep, this is the special use criteria?
I don't see any reason to deviate from what we have documented.
Okay.
My opinion only.
Which page does this fall on?
On my weird thing,
Yeah.
19, where it says waterfront sub criteria. Okay, so we made.
The only, I'm sorry, the only one that might be is 4-3, off-street parking spaces. I mean, anything that deals with parking, we might,
Take off and just put it under the parking thing?
yeah, we might have an issue there.
Well, I'm just thinking like logistics in terms of when we do this in pieces and we're relying on a future piece, the piece isn't there. So you're gonna be relying on existing parking standards until that gets amended. If we're taking, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, I'm just calling your attention to the fact that if you remove
Okay.
that here,
Yeah.
we haven't redone parking yet.
Yeah.
This is the trouble when
Yeah.
you send pieces forward that are relying on pieces you haven't done yet.
Okay, so probably,
Good point. But we can leave it in, and then when we do the parking thing.
come back
we
and
can take
revisit
out,
it.
right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
could.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I think that makes sense, so I retract my last statement.
okay. And is 20% the right amount? Like, if you have a small hotel and it's a weekend in the summertime, is because remember where we're talking about, is 20% the right amount of parking spaces off-street? Because there's no street parking anywhere where these things are gonna be.
Well, that was the impetus of my concern.
I mean, I'm gonna say that we didn't do this, like, we didn't just pluck numbers out of the sky. We looked for other
Right.
similar things. So if there's a 20% in there, I'm gonna, with relative confidence, tell you that that came from somewhere. I can look into it if you want and confirm the number. But again, we did not just like make up stuff. We went looking for legitimate examples to base it on.
Yeah.
I think the number makes sense probably in all other cases except the waterfront because of the aforementioned
Maybe.
concerns around parking.
Yeah.
Honestly, that was the impetus for my other comment, my previous comment.
I kind of think just because of what our waterfront looks like.
Well, I
should be
I
higher.
wanna look at something very, very quickly, because I don't wanna drag, this, but I'm curious what our current parking requirement would be for, I've gotta believe that it's based on rooms.
Maybe, could not be though.
Hotel motel, 5 car spaces plus 1 space for each unit, room, or suite.
See, we say you gotta have a parking space.
You have to have a space for every room,
Plus 5 for that.
plus 5 more.
That's not, that's,
That's current
yeah.
parking standard. So you could delete this and just leave it up to this. If they need a variance, they'll go get a variance. And then until we revise the parking
I
standards.
think that
Okay,
needs to be the
so let's-
approach.
So let's do that. Like, we'll take off that one, and that'll be that.
So we're
And-
taking off 4.3.
Yeah, and I do have one other question. A designated drop-off area near an entrance to the building sufficient to hold vehicles representing at least 10% of the number of rooms. I mean, we're talking about pretty small hotels here, like, and some of these lots might not actually have the space to have a, I mean, I suppose they could get a variance though, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just trying to, I mean.
You could take off the 10% and just require that they have this designated, I mean, they're all gonna do
They
this
have
anyway.
a drop-off area.
Okay.
But
so-
don't peg it to some percentage of rooms.
Percentage of the number of rooms.
Yep, so they have to have a drop-off area.
And I would
and
cross off sufficient to hold vehicles representing at least 10% of the number of rooms offered by the hotel or motel and stop there,
Yep,
so that you leave that does not block
Block.
vehicle parking spaces.
yep,
And I might add something that, well, no, because I think number 1 takes care of it, so that's what I would do.
okay.
I hate to burst it, but it needs to be specific and objective.
It's a
Sufficient.
designated drop-off area
Yep.
that doesn't block parking spaces.
Okay.
Do you
That's
think
it.
that's not specific enough?
If you're stopping there.
That's where we're
You're not saying
stopping.
sufficient to hold vehicles.
No,
No, we're
It
axing
makes
that.
sense.
nope.
Yep.
We're
Well, if you're
striking
stopping-
out the sufficient to the word motel.
Got it.
So that whole middle line,
Yep, that's fine then.
Yep. Okay, so see, we got through that one. Now we're gonna.
we only have
It's only
700 more to
9:22.
go.
Let's keep rolling.
Actually, we don't. So we're gonna hum right along. So farming or raising of animals, everything there is pretty much a no, except for preserve for the protection of wildlife. This is the big one though, fish and shellfish processing and storage for retail sales. So originally, the zoning update committee thought, okay, in Waterfront 1, right, up near
Yep.
the gas tanks.
Yep.
But having spoken with the Harbor Commission, they are recommending that we don't put either of these in here right now because it's a little too, in their opinion, it's a little too nebulous with how the state is defining aquaculture and whether or not we actually want to have a shellfish kind of or fish processing plant, and maybe we don't. And after meeting with them, I'm inclined to agree and say, for now at least, we should take this off the table. And just make those no's, with the idea though that retail sales of fish is allowed in the waterfront. You can have a fish store, like, under regular retail, right? Bridgeport Seafood, whatever, you know, you
Sure.
can have a retail
So-
fish plant.
So the recommendation is keep the line item, but make it both no's so that we don't lose track of it and see how things proceed with
Yeah,
Harbor Commission and
yeah.
So we're keeping the line, we're just making it
no's.
no's
Making it-
everywhere?
Well, I don't even, I guess we keep, I don't know. I mean, the whole aquaculture thing just needs like a, maybe just take it out.
Well, this is not, we're talking about fish and shellfish processing for storage for retail sales, right?
Right, but that's the component to the aquaculture, right?
I mean,
Is
that's the processing
the
side.
processing side of it. So,
But who's to say that it has to be one and the same?
Like, we need to separate this and separate.
Well, but I'm saying, like, what, I may not open that in, like, we have to fill out the rest of the line
right,
in all the other districts, because
Right.
there's nothing that says that I have to have this facility on the water.
oh,
It's not, it doesn't have to be directly, I don't have to own an aquaculture farm in order to open a fish and shellfish processing storage for retail sales. I might just be somebody who wants to open this, and maybe I do it in,
Blissful bonus.
right.
all right, so then maybe we leave the line and just turn those into no's for now, and then we figure out exactly what the use is, because what we're trying to avoid is in our waterfront, sort of a, kind of big, smelly, it's not gonna work there kind of thing. So we just make those no's for now?
Can we-
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Fishes, shellfish.
Yep,
Yeah, we're just gonna make those no's. Public and semi-public
Across the board,
uses,
I'm sorry.
yes.
So these were special use permits, so you're saying no?
we're just gonna make them no's for now.
Could I,
Yeah.
row I, personal residential marijuana cultivation, but if we're saying no residential here,
Well, remember, we have mixed-use residential.
And there are existing residential in the waterfront district. And I don't think you can tell people that they can't do this. It's not regulated by us.
I want to, in my head, I was trying to reconcile the
Yeah,
previous
but if we
conversation
allow
about
mixed-use
residential.
Residential, you can grow your pot plants upstairs.
Yeah, I mean,
guess,
sure.
like-
And we did,
I get it.
we did leave some residences in the waterfront
there's
district,
one.
right? Well,
No, I think there's only one left.
But it
But
goes to
yeah.
the mixed use,
But yeah, but you have the mixed use.
Sure.
That's why there's that one in there too about this, the sale of agricultural products that you grew, because heck, if you grow,
Yeah.
if you're growing lavender plants like in your patio and you wanna
Sure.
sell them.
Okay. Yep, totally fine.
Okay.
Let's keep going.
Public and semi-public uses, the first one here is, which is B, which is, again, whether or not this should be a special use or a performance thing, nonprofit organization, club, lodge, social or community center building. And, we have this one as performance criteria. The zoning update committee, their only thing that came out of this was it had to function in support of participation in marine-related activities. So it has to be some sort of thing that, whatever the mission of the nonprofit organization or community center, whatever it is.
Baptism.
So whether that's like a community sailing program or, some other kind of thing that encourages, marine stuff. That was what the zoning update committee had. Ashley's list has building footprint limited to 20,000 square feet, which I think is fair. We don't want gargantuan buildings. Hours of operation between 7 AM and 10 PM, except extended. It's not really, the council permits things, they don't license them, but permit by the town council, so if you get a special use permit to have an event. No amplified live music is permitted outdoors. That's the code in Tiverton anyways. The only time that you can do that is twice a year you can get one. So I wonder if we should take that out, because is, it's already in the regular ordinances that you can't have
Take
live
it out.
outdoor music. And if you can get your twice-a-year permit. Leasing of the lodge meeting hall to third parties is prohibited. I think that's okay, because, you know. Permitted to serve meals on the premises for members and their guests only.
We're drawing a distinction between serving and preparing,
Yeah. I mean,
i.e. a commercial kitchen.
yeah, I think no commercial kitchen is okay. I don't know if we need to, have this. I mean, if you allow them to have like the standard little kitchen where, you know, people.
Yeah, I make coffee to serve with the donuts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that is okay. Not a commercial kitchen, but, you know, yeah, like
Yeah,
that kind of kitchen.
yeah.
So what
I
would,
can't find the section you're in, sorry.
Page,
Thank you.
yeah,
under
18.
performance criteria?
That's why I'm looking under
And
somewhere else.
again, here's the
Okay.
same thing, is these are things, performance criteria, they special use, like, it's, the General Assembly really made life complicated with this, because this stuff it is not easy to figure out what you're supposed to do with it. It really isn't.
So if you put these in as performance standards, then they can go get relief.
So,
The legal interpretation in Tiverton is that if it's a performance standard, it's subject to, or relief is available to it. If it is a specific and objective criteria of a special use permit, it is not a waivable or variable item.
Well, it
You
feels
meet-
more
you
like
meet
it
the
should be the
standard.
latter. Specific and objective criteria.
so make this a special use permit then instead of performance criteria?
You can state, if it's a performance standard, you can state
Cannot be
Varied.
varied.
unless by use variance,
Oh,
or only by use variance.
okay.
Well, that further muddies the waters between the
That's what
two
we just did with
worlds.
solar,
This is
though.
why this
Yeah.
is so complicated. So maybe we should just say this as, we want these things to be firm, and then we'll let you guys figure out what the best way to write this
What do you
is.
mean by firm?
Meaning,
Like not be,
not waivable.
not subject to relief.
And whether or not, you know, whether or not you think it's a thing that fits better as a performance criteria or a special use criteria, we'll count on you to maybe help us figure out which one. We're just saying, this is what we want.
I have a question. With a lot of this nebulousness happening, will you guys come back to us before this goes to town council?
I think we're gonna,
Yeah, we're gonna have to.
So, what do we wanna do about this? Lodges, meeting halls are permitted to serve meals on the premises for members and their guests only.
I mean, I think it's fine because the next one is they're not allowed to include commercial kitchens, right? So
Yeah.
it draws the distinction between preparation and just, hey, I got some packaged food and I'm
Right, you're
serving
not
it.
cooking at this place,
Yeah.
but you can
Yep.
provide pizza or
Cater,
bring in
yeah,
catering
right,
or
yeah,
have a
perfect.
food truck come or whatever.
Yeah. 30% of the gross floor area for office space, I think that's good. Sleeping facilities are prohibited. No alcohol is permitted on the premises. The one thing about that, I think that maybe should say not eligible for a liquor license, only because if you have a special use permit for your, whatever, 2 events a year, that you can do that, or your,
Well,
like.
why don't we say no alcohol service is permitted,
the-
unless
you wanna-
allowed by whatever it's called, if it's an event permit or whatever.
It's a special event permit, but I think, and usually in that case, it's not them, it's like the caterer got the caterer's liquor license, you know what I mean?
But they're getting an event permit for a specific function, which would allow them to have alcohol at those specific functions under that event permit, but not at any other time.
Yeah, so maybe it is no alcohol service permitted on premise unless otherwise authorized by a special event permit.
Yes, although the only thing in the zoning that might confuse people is that we only let you get 2 special event permits a year. So, you know, but that isn't in the zoning code, that's in the regular code. So if somebody thinks, well, I'm just gonna, you know, do this and I'll just get a lot of special event permits, that's why I wonder if the, you know, but as long as you guys think the language is
Well, we
good.
can give it, we can say, unless otherwise authorized by a special event permit as provided for in, and then we would give wherever that's regulated.
Okay,
We'll
Yeah.
give the section, and
There you go.
they'll go find that they can only get 2.
yeah. Okay, then we got a bunch of, no's until we get to private, trade, or professional school. And that is a special use permit, but only in Waterfront 1, not permitted in Waterfront 2. And the, so again, the zoning update committee said restricted to instruction in marine-related trades or professions only. And then here's this other weird thing, street access not through residential neighborhood or limited volume. So Waterfront 1 is, you know, just that one little thing up at the top, right? And you can come through Fall River, but the other streets kind of go through a neighborhood. So everybody was okay with some sort of, you know, waterfront-related trade school up there, but not something that would send a bazillion cars up and down those streets. So we didn't really know how to, the marine-related only part is easy to write, right? That it's gotta be in support of some sort of marine trades or something. But the volume or the traffic thing, we didn't know how to sort
Can
that
work
one
on
out.
that.
And then Ashley's firm has some hours of operation between 6 AM and 9 PM, a noise management plan. Storage shall be, any storage there shall be completely enclosed by solid fence or a wall 5 feet high. Storage areas should be located at the rear of the lot. Hazardous materials. And you also added the marine-related thing only. So the only thing we don't know quite what to do is, you know, a small school would be fine, but something with, you know, 150 students going up and down those residential streets twice a day might be excessive.
Do you think that that would be negated by the specificity around having to be a marine?
I think it's more the size of it, right? I mean, because it's class, right? In theory, it's class, so everybody's getting in and getting out at one time. So the idea isn't like, you know, you wouldn't, 200 people all leaving and driving up, you know, Judson Street at one time would be a little,
So do we put a limit on, well, the thing is, will there be multiple classes, class size? I feel like it gets a little muddy, right? Because what if you offer multiple classes throughout the day and someone, it's like taking
You could
2
limit it,
classes?
I mean, you could limit it to capacity. So at no time can you have more than X number of people. If your concern is, but I mean, you're putting something in here, we're gonna put in wording that requires that access is through, not through like a neighborhood residential street.
but there isn't.
How are you going to enforce that?
This isn't getting built without some review by the planning board.
I understand.
I mean, that's why this one definitely needs to be a special use permit. And one of the criteria, maybe one of the criteria is that the traffic volume will not, like there, I know Todd wants something too specific and I get it, but something.
Todd does not.
What?
The
Todd
state
put standards
does.
Before, we're fine.
Don't put this on me.
So you
No,
could,
I get it, but we have to have something better than that now.
let me look for something traffic related, because I think we can do something that again, traffic is really, really hard. Everyone thinks that, like, you know, traffic's gonna be awful, we're gonna stop this on traffic, and every traffic engineer that I've ever met
Right,
has
it's
come
a
in and said, like, nope, it's fine, like, we'll just mitigate it this way, or we'll mitigate it that way. I mean, you can use like levels of service as triggers, but again, you almost never see a traffic study that says that the development is actually gonna reduce the level of service to a new level of service. Like, no, it's a C now, it's gonna stay a C.
Right.
Or it's an F now, it's gonna stay an F with our development, like,
I just can't imagine 150 people doing a class together at the same time at something on the waterfront. And most people don't even go to class now, like everything is virtual. I understand there would be like some sort of physical thing that they're doing, but I can't imagine it would be more than 50 people per class, just for the.
I mean, you could limit the size of the building.
Yeah.
By doing that, you're gonna limit how many people can be there, just by saying it can't be a big building.
Yeah, maybe.
And where's the entrance? But we already have a.
State Avenue?
Yeah, the next one is State Avenue.
Can't limit the size of the building, actually, what if it's like the restoration, that restoration school?
The what?
That restoration school, right? They have like a
Iris.
lot in there.
They used to, is gone,
Okay.
the Coronet.
Well, that's why I started with,
No, it's still there.
with people, like the number of people.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, that's a good point. If it's a marine trade school or something, maybe you need to have a building you can put a boat inside
Well,
of.
that's the thing, yeah, I mean,
Right.
at Iris. Yeah.
That's exactly what that is.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great, it's a good thing. I mean, you look at something like Iris, and something like 97% of their graduates have jobs before they graduate. I mean, it's a good program. So,
We're also, like, I hear what everyone is saying, but at the same time, you are gonna get this as some form of a development project, so
Yeah.
you will, or, well, maybe I will, who knows? Let me look and see if we can find something traffic related.
Okay, but in general, everybody's okay with a special use permit only in Waterfront 1 for something like that?
Yes.
Okay, so, public utility uses, and these, I think we should use whatever Ashley's firm has, they're just special use high voltage electric, transmission towers, but not limited to radio frequency, those are special use permits, and I think, we should just go with, there isn't anything for high voltage electric transmission towers, or towers including but not limited to radio frequency, but I'm thinking those are ones that you guys could come up with.
So we
what
need those? We need specific and objective for those, you're
They're already
saying?
covered enough.
Are they? Well, that's part of our question. I mean, we didn't really know what to do with these, because we don't know all that. We're kind of like, we're gonna punt those to you. So if they're already governed enough, then so be it.
Where are they governed?
I don't know.
I mean, the high voltage electric transmission towers, like, nobody's building those except the electric company is building those, and I don't know how much say we have over where a public utility locates their equipment anyway. Like, I don't know that we can say no.
I agree. Kind of like cell towers.
You can't
So-
say no. I mean, you can regulate them to a certain degree, but you have to allow them, and you have to have reasonable standards for them. We can't, I mean,
So, just so you know, right now in our zoning code, we state everything is no everywhere, right?
Yes.
On that. So we were trying to figure out, okay, well, if we have to have them someplace, only in Waterfront 1, but if we can make, this actually is maybe a thing that's worth you guys looking at and saying, listen, these are public utility things, this is what you have a choice on, and this is what you don't have a choice on, and we clean up our zoning code. Because if we can't tell anybody, no, they can't have an electric power substation there, why do we even have it?
When we were doing the PowerPoint, they went to the powers that be.
There's a state siting board
Right.
that overrides
Right.
communities, and if they need something,
They
They
they're
do
gonna
it.
they'll go to that siting board and they'll get it.
Substations, everything.
So Ashley, could you look at then section 5
why we have
and
notes.
figure out which one of these we should even have in our zoning code, because we don't have a choice?
I think for now, because of time, we just leave this no.
Okay, we'll just make
If they
them.
come in and say we're allowed to under this federal regulation or state regulation.
Then we don't have a choice anyway.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll just turn those to no. The one that we did add, though, is not water tower, but a water tank as a special use permit, but only in Waterfront 1. Just because with the water situation, there may be a business there that says, listen, we need more water, we're gonna get a water tank, we'll fill it at night. But there is criteria for it, which again, I don't know if this should be a special use permit or a performance standard, but Ashley's firm had some, well, the zoning update committee said a water tank only as a necessary accessory to the primary use, and that it can't exceed a certain height in feet, which we didn't come up with that number, but we don't want it to be huge. So we need a number of how tall your water tank could be. And if it's public water, it requires an agreement with the water district. And then Ashley's firm came up with it should be painted a neutral color, not neon or day glow colors or anything. Can't be used for display of advertising except to identify the manufacturer. Signage visible at the entrance, the owner contact, a security plan, have to be FAA compliant.
These are all those things we talked about.
Yeah, water tanks shall provide proof water district. So I think that those are good. The only question is, should that be a special use permit or performance criteria?
How did we approach it for the Saturday morning?
We didn't talk about water tanks. We only talked about water tanks over at the zoning update committee.
Well, I distinctly remember a conversation differentiating between tanks and towers are only tanks up on stilts.
Oh, you know what? You're right. We
Yeah.
talked about it here. This is
Yeah.
what happens when you go to too many.
Yeah.
meetings. No, you are right.
So
Now-
whatever,
now
again,
you-
whatever
now
we
that you
did
say
there,
that, It's coming back to me.
however we did it there,
Well, that's what's here. This is what we have
This is
here.
what
but how did we,
We called it a special use permit.
well, there you go.
Okay, then it's a special use permit, but we didn't come up with a number of feet in height. We need to, somebody's gotta pick a
You guys
number.
make a recommendation?
Yep.
I mean, isn't there, I have to imagine there's a
We need to look.
industry standard
Yeah, we need to
there.
look at, but we want to think about water tanks for like individual uses, not water tanks for like
Municipal.
municipal or
Yeah.
entire neighborhoods and things like that.
Right.
We need to look at what size do you need for individual uses and how tall does
So-
it need to be in order, because I'm sure there's gravity plays into all of this somehow and.
Well, we need 35 feet are standard. I don't know if
What's the building height?
35.
Okay, so maybe that's the ceiling.
And just confirm actually that works with all the gravity things. And
Okay.
Yeah, but consider the water tank that was built over at Roger Williams University. That thing is way higher than
Oh,
35.
I mean,
And it's enormous.
I thought it was a tower, but, because it's up on stilts.
It's up on stilts, yeah,
We're
I'm
talking
sorry,
just
it's not a
I
tank,
mean,
it's a
most
tower.
likely, I think, and I'm saying
We're
this.
just talking tanks now, right? Okay,
I'm
so
s-
tanks
I'm
are.
saying this simply from observation, not because I know things about water tanks, but I think what happens when you need a water tank is it probably goes on your roof.
yeah, I think you're
You
right.
need gravity otherwise you gotta pump the water out of the tank. If the tank is up
So
lifted,
perhaps
gravity will
for-
feed.
Is there a way to craft the language here that we're not taking the avenue of saying you can't exceed a certain height, but rather it is on a project by project basis evaluated based on
Well, I
the
would
need,
I
the
would
use,
s-
the,
I would say the way to do it is to say that you can't exceed the height of the building
Yeah.
beyond whatever,
Plus
10%, whatever the number is, because you want the building to still be able to be its full height, but you don't want the tank then to sit on top of the building 35 feet tall.
Stonebridge has tanks. I wonder how tall they are. I mean, they have tanks over at the water treatment.
I mean, I'm thinking and again, this is just observation and common sense. If you have an individual business owner that needs a water tank to help supply water, they're gonna probably put a tank on their roof, and they're gonna want it to be gravity fed. Otherwise, you have to pump the water and install the pump, and then it gets more complex. I'm thinking of also New York City. You see all kinds of water tanks on building roofs that they use.
But those are flatter roofs, I think our design doesn't necessarily work with. I think the reality though is some may, if we're thinking about some things that are industrial and flat, if you think about Lompoc, it's a flat roof, they put a water tank. But let's say hypothetically, a small restaurant or a hotel wanted to do a water tank, they might not want to put it on the roof, they might want to do something that's elevated into the side. Because I think there's a couple in North Tiverton, because of some potable water issues, they had to get
Let us
water
do
tanks.
some research on water tanks.
Okay. But
Just said
basically,
it's already fine, I'm not getting dimensional variance.
Wouldn't it depend on the size of the building? I have a pump in my basement to pump the water through my house.
The
Because of
concept
water
though is that
pressure.
it will have to be elevated on some level, no matter.
Or, I mean, if the height max in this town is 35 feet,
Yeah.
then even if you put a tank on top of the building, flat roof or not, you can't go above 35 feet.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
you know, sometimes we
should
get.
start it
Wait a
this
minute.
way.
I mean, this is over architecting.
You know why this is over architecting, and this just occurred to me? We're talking about only in Waterfront One, where the most predominant feature in Waterfront One right now are
Giant
the
friggin'
giant
tanks.
houses.
Oh, yeah, forget it, they can do whatever they
We
want.
are maybe, we're not too far in the weeds here.
Well,
Okay,
it is 950, so.
so, okay.
35 feet, dimensional variance allowed.
It's 9:50. Do we want to do open recreation uses and stop, or should we stop now, Stu?
Let's just finish this up.
Did you decide the height on the water tank?
It's
35.
going in at the height of whatever the district is, and then you just go get a variance.
Okay.
What's a neutral color?
White.
Not
Khaki.
neon or day glow.
White beige.
Khaki.
I understand the day glow and all that, but what is a neutral color? Does that mean you can't have it blue, like,
That is correct.
you see water tanks all over the place that are painted blue? I mean, that's probably the most common color, other than the ones that have the town name painted on them. And you're taking that away from all of these little New
But
England
I think
towns.
we're
Oh my
thinking about
goodness.
towers, guys, not tanks.
Okay. Open recreation uses, public park to include structures. What do we got here for 12? I'm just looking. These are from Ashley. Public park with food and drink, food service, packaged foods, no prepared buildings, 150 hours of operation, reduce hazards. Screening, lighting, sports fields. Sounds good to me. And that would be the same in both districts. And if they're gonna have food and drink, it'd be the same. So it's all the same for all of them. The rest of everything else is the way it was before, other than the public, bathing beach, public only, is a permitted use in both zones. A boat or a yacht club is permitted use in both zones. Waterfront recreation, that's permitted in both. Campgrounds are not. Office uses, professional home offices are permitted. This is where it gets a little bit different, because we've changed in general some of the things for the whole of zoning. So now it just says professional and general office. It doesn't, try and identify what it is specifically. A bank or a credit union is a no in Waterfront 1, but a yes in Waterfront 2. Let's see, restaurants and entertainment. So, well, this is an interesting thing. So, not including entertainment is permitted in either zone. Including entertainment is a special use permit. But I gotta say, this is what happens all the time, is that in order to have entertainment inside a building in Tiverton, you have to get an entertainment license, which you get from the council. And most of the time, what I've seen happens is somebody builds a restaurant, just to, without entertainment, right? And then a year into it, they just go to the council and get an entertainment permit, and they've completely bypassed the entire special use permit thing, because nobody seems to know that they were supposed to get a special use permit for this. So I don't even know what to say about that. I'm just telling you that's what happens. So do we have a thought about
Leave it
this?
in case somebody wants to open up a specific club that requires a ground music.
It doesn't prohibit John from citing them.
Say that again?
John can go out there and cite them if they're required to have a special use permit.
It's a violation of the zoning ordinance to not have one.
Right, but no one ever
No one
notices,
enforces
and then
it.
they've got their entertainment license, and it's,
But it's an
But their
enforcement issue, it's not.
entertainment license wouldn't supersede their need to get a special use
No,
permit.
I'm surprised that there's no check.
There's no-
It's not circulated amongst the departments.
no, there's no checks and balances.
Not yet, not
It makes sense to circulate it amongst the departments.
Yeah, so, so the question is, do we have any, the one thing about the entertainment portion of this, and this is just like the school. I don't think anybody wants somebody who's got an entertainment, this is hard, because like the Boathouse has an entertainment license, right? It's a very nice restaurant. On the other hand, we have some bars, restaurants that stay open late that have entertainment licenses. And I don't think anybody wants one of those going down a residential street where, the bar's gonna close at 1 o'clock in the morning and all the cars are driving, their only way out is through a residential street. So I suppose you can't have as a criteria that you can only have access off of a main road or not through a residential street, but that would be the criteria, so that, you don't have a neighborhood with a whole bunch of people leaving later.
I think you can make the criteria almost anything you want as long as it's specific and objective.
Class whatever street,
Really?
access by class whatever street. It
Okay.
may mean that you get none of them, or it's an impossible condition to meet, but
Well, no, I'm sure Main Road is a class of whatever street, right?
yeah.
So,
Ju-
which,
But all the sides, none of the side streets are the same.
they aren't. But that brings me to the second really fun thing that
Well, do you want us to add that? Because I gotta look up the right wording and put it in there.
Okay, well, before you do that, here's the other good one. Tavern or nightclub. So, a tavern, which I didn't know what it was exactly, and there's no definition for this in our zoning code, and there's no
I
definition.
thought we did this, Tricia. We did to go through this whole Googling tavern, and we removed something else too.
Did we
Remember?
take tavern out?
No, we
Yeah,
took
I thought
another
we-
thing out. We left tavern, but we took.
One served food, one did not.
Okay,
Yeah.
but,
Conversation.
but here's what I found out. State law defines a tavern in the liquor section of the general laws as a place that serves food and provides sleeping quarters.
I mean, that is a not contemporary definition.
It's getting tangled.
But that's what it says.
Dare I say archaic, but
So,
Medieval.
honestly, I'm thinking Lord of the Rings here, but
So,
I think we should eliminate the word tavern, because there is a definition in state law in the liquor section that defines it.
But that's not gonna override their zoning to allow,
but we don't bar.
We don't have
We
that.
don't have bar anywhere else. We
Should
have
be bar or
restaurant.
nightclub.
It should be bar or nightclub,
That's where I'm going.
yeah. It should be bar.
I mean, bar is the contemporary interpretation of that.
Or you just add bar, tavern, or
Well,
nightclub.
the tavern.
I would take tavern out.
Tavern gets its own line, a whole bunch of no's, if that's what we want.
Yeah.
But isn't
And then
that-
bar or
but what's the
nightclub?
difference between a tavern and a hotel or
Well, I
an
was just
inn?
gonna say, technically a tavern is a hotel attached to a restaurant.
Or it's a hotel with a restaurant bar inside of it, right? Like that is the contemporary. So just
Just get rid
the
of it.
essence of. So it's 10 o'clock.
Yeah, we're getting punchy.
I mean, clearly this is going to need to be
Changes in
continued.
different document.
Yeah, let's continue, it's 10 o'clock. But we do want to approve 2 sets of minutes, I think. So, Tricia, if it's okay with you, we'll call a halt there.
It's fine with me, although I think we should try and.
Have a
find
special meeting.
And finish this and get it to the council. I hate to say it, but I think we should.
Okay,
I
so-
wonder if we could do that in a relatively efficient manner right after the workshop with Scott Millar.
That's the end of September.
Can you wait that long? Yeah.
September.
So we'll need to do something. We'll need to get something going. We can ask Ed to pull members when they get a chance to look at their calendars and see.
Yep.
But this would probably be an evening meeting. Because, a Saturday is not,
Yep.
if you want to do it in August, it would be an evening meeting.
You have
But
trouble coming in this weekend.
But I kind of like to have I'd kind of like to have it structured tightly, the meeting structured tightly,
Well,
so
I-
we know exactly what decisions we have to make.
I think what makes the most sense is for me to take your or us to take your document, clean up what we agreed on,
Yeah.
and make it its own waterfront section, so you're just dealing with that isolated. We go through it, you finish making all the changes, and then at the end of it, we have the document that goes to the council, and you have a clean version that you're working from, and I'll worry about putting all that back together at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan.
So Ashley, would, you guys need some time to put that together?
I need a little bit of time.
Right.
Yes. I don't need a ton of time. I think we can turn it around relatively quickly. No, I don't need that much time.
Okay, so 2 weeks.
I mean, I think I can, the complicating factors, I'm away next week, but I can have it worked on while I'm gone. I just won't be, I'm gonna have to take time to go through it. So if you gave me 2 weeks, I could get you back something.
The good news is, there's only 6 more special use permits left in the whole document to go through. So it's not like we got through more than half of them tonight.
Because the reality of it is that I need to put these into the use table as it currently is now, with no's everywhere else, so that we're only changing the waterfront district. So we have to do that, and we have to add the specific and objective to the right section for just the waterfront one, so you can bring those back.
Right.
So I need a little bit of time to organize that, so that you have a clean document, but it should make this conversation move faster.
It'll make it it'll help us structure
Yes.
a much more efficient meeting.
do you wanna just pick a date now? I mean, you're all here, well, Rosemary's not, but I'd rather just know now, like leaving today, what the deadline is, so that I can get people started working on it while I'm still here this week. If you don't pull people and then I'm away, I can't give them instruction while I'm on vacation, and that will delay it further.
We did have a special meeting scheduled for August 20th, I think we had a meeting set up.
Yeah, that's our default date if we need a second
something
meeting,
that
so
we were all looking
maybe,
at anyway.
maybe we
We should
should
use
look
that.
at September 20th.
August 20th.
I mean, August 20th.
Hold
Tuesday
on,
night.
let me, hold on.
Which just happens to be
can't.
2 weeks from
I can't
today.
be there. I can't be there. I'm in Situate. Sorry. Huh?
I'll be in Woonsocket.
About August 27th.
I can do the 27th. I could also do the 22nd. I can do the 27th. Oh, I don't want to be here that day.
Somebody will ask me.
27th.
27th is fine with me.
Do we, everyone needs to start at 7, or we start earlier? I don't want to preclude anyone from coming, so if you can't, say you can't.
Yeah,
But could we do 6?
yeah, that would be.
I might be a little bit late, but I can, sure.
Yeah,
6 o'clock on the 27th?
yep,
Yeah.
yep, that's better than 7.
I think one good thing that we could all do too, though, is to review to review the documents before, all the things that are marked as special use permits or performance criteria before we get to the meeting, so that we all put our thought into.
The 27th, correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm just struggling with the idea of having across-the-board performance standards on things like traffic, lighting, landscaping, design standards, and how that fits into this picture. Because, if we could come up with good performance standards for those generic categories, that would take a huge burden off, because those categories come up time and time again whenever specific uses are being discussed. And, I don't know.
Well, I think
I mean, there's, I just don't know how this whole thing fits together.
well, you're muddling your way through it like everyone else in Rhode Island that's trying to figure out the
Well,
specific and objective criteria.
You're right, Stu, the
but-
parking standards are going to be addressed apparently by the zoning ordinance committee. I
Yep.
think lighting can be easily addressed with a simple dark sky.
We
Dark
talked
sky,
about
that's
writing
really
a
simple.
lighting ordinance.
That's really
That's-
simple, dark sky
right.
compliant, end of discussion.
Yeah, we talked about doing it that way, and
That's an
just
easy
writing a
one to
lighting
do,
ordinance.
What other general one are you considering?
Well, I mean, we have a signage
Yeah.
section in zoning. Does it need to be updated? Or do we need,
He says yes.
yeah.
So that'll be another thing that the zoning committee will do.
That's, I think, lower on your totem pole.
Right, although, in all fairness to the zoning committee, right, some of this, I think it would be helpful if we got some draft examples from other towns to start with, because, for the zoning update committee to start with a blank piece of paper and stuff like that is,
Yeah.
it's a stretch, so.
It's very time consuming, let's put it that way,
Well,
very time
I
consuming.
definitely wouldn't do it that way. Like, if you guys, you know, and Jay decide, like, let's do lighting,
Right,
and I know,
right.
and I think, you know, we could probably benefit from you and Jay and I agreeing on what's on the agenda in advance so that I can come prepared. We can give you a draft lighting ordinance.
But there's something, didn't we do that the last time? There is something you're gonna bring to us for the next time. It's the part of the parking thing, right? More parking thing.
Yes.
Yeah, so. Once we get through these zones.
But if we had that conversation ahead of the meeting, like if I know lighting's going on, then I'll bring you some
Okay,
examples
minutes.
and draft.
Okay, we have two sets of minutes. The first is June 24. I'm looking at Janice.
I didn't find anything.
Did
I didn't
anybody
find
find any
anything, no.
problem?
It looked fine the way I looked.
Okay, and I didn't find anything either, so I'll make a motion to approve the June 24, 2024 minutes as presented.
Second.
A second from Bill Gerlach. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. Those in favor, I think. Yeah, you have to recuse yourself. Then, how about July 2, 2024? Did anybody find anything amiss there? I think I did actually find one thing. Let me think. Let me run through here.
Everybody's zoning code is gonna be like this with performance standards
know.
and special use criteria. It's gonna be like this.
Okay, I didn't find anything. Did anybody else find anything? July 2, 2024. Okay, in that case, I'll make a motion to approve as presented. We have a second from Dick. And is there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor? Good. And so that, and everything else on our agenda can be deferred. So let's, adjournment at 10:15, almost. I make a privileged motion to adjourn at 10:11 PM.
Imagine if two of them didn't cancel tonight, where we would be. Really long.